In Kyle year 513, a grim bearded officer in a military uniform steps up and kicks off the proceedings, then declares they're about to begin the execution of Baron Solus Tackle, the fallen former Lord of Esther. Meanwhile, Tackle hears a bell screaming through the air and can't help but wonder where in the world it's coming from. Tackle's whole body throbs as he stares at Est's central square, watching that smug, gray-bearded old man lay into the townspeople with a full-on speech. He can't shake the feeling something went terribly wrong, and then it hits him. He remembers a public execution. Then he whips his eyes down at himself strapped to the platform and freezes when he realizes that's him talking there. A shadowy figure validates his hunch, and Tackle instantly senses the air is primed for a storm of stones. So he braces himself, because there's no stopping it. He stares out over his territory, realizing it's been blessed with rich, fertile land and an amazing lord because his parents poured more than a decade into building and defending it. But it all started crumbling when he was just a little over 10. Plague ripped away his family and his chief retainer. A massive flood smashed through everything. And then his brother, who had a bright future ahead, was cut down in battle during the war. After every disaster tore everything apart, all that was left was an ordinary nobody with zero special powers, yet the world still wouldn't let up because famine slammed down hard, and then the neighboring country invaded. Tackle just had to face it. People were furious at him, snarling that he was incompetent and calling him a lord with no real authority. After the defeat, there was only one way out. He traded his life and a sliver of wealth to secure his people's lives and protect their homes. He's hoping they can finally breathe easy now, as he finally gears up to reunite with everyone he's been fighting to get back. A command cracks through the air, light the fire, and the flames explode to life. A voice snaps out of nowhere, demanding Lord Tackle, and Tackle instantly knows it's the one. A shout cuts through the chaos. Everyone move as a dark-haired girl named Name barrels through the crowd. Tackle shouts her name, and relief hits him hard as he tells her thankfully she made it out of the mansion attack alive. Then Anne slams through the wooden execution platform, splintering beams as she crashes down in her cloak, fighting to get to Tackle before anything stops her. He shouts her name and makes it crystal clear she's not allowed. Tackle snaps at Anne and warns her that staying back is pure danger, but Anne's face crumbles with tears as she thanks him for standing by her brother and sister, serving the Solis family as their maid. She opens her mouth to speak, but Tackle slams into the moment. Then Anne snaps back. "I know." Anne lunges toward Tackle and tells him, straight up, that no matter what anyone throws at him, she'll always treasure his people. She drops into a deep bow before him, right there on the platform. She crumpled to her knees between the guards and the townspeople packed around, staring as the execution began. Meanwhile, a wave of women surges forward from the crowd. People swore Tackle worked non-stop for them, burning through his sleep to rebuild the crumbling territory. Another swears he stood shoulder to shoulder with them through every disaster, surviving on scraps for meals and whatever beds he could find, while a third insists he sprinted around during the plague for the people cold sweat, zero fear of infection, and all heart. Then they all shout the same thing that they know, and Tackle just freezes in shock, staring at Claire, Misery, and Rosa, realizing it's really them. He can't wrap his head around how, even right now, they're still praying and crying for him. Tack. Hill tries to wrap his head around it, wondering if he's been this popular all along. Then he spots their beautiful women, bursts out laughing, and moves on. He's saying he's happy, like this nightmare somehow doesn't even touch him. He's tied to the execution stake as a roaring crowd closes in. Then Tackhill's face snaps into focus when he realizes something's off about everyone standing around him. Suddenly, a wild, bright light erupts and blasts across the execution grounds, burning through the air like a warning. One person in the crowd gasps in panic while someone else blurts, "What in the world is that light?" Tackle's vision starts to blur, and he can't tell if the smoke is messing with him. Then it hits him. This could be the end. He bows and thanks everyone, then blurts out an apology for being such a useless lord. Then a voice booms that once Tackle's skill kicks in, space-time magic will flood into him as bloodline magic plus a territory appraisal skill, and Tackle's face snaps into pure shock and total confusion. Right as he realizes this awakening is hitting him of all times right now. The narrator breaks it down when a lord finally awakens. Their skills flare to life through loyalty and the people's territory and presence, and without them, even a noble's worth crumbles. Then someone yells, "It's too late! His authority won't wake up now!" And everything snaps into place. Tact, he realizes this is how it all ends. Soli explodes into a shout, saying he's done with all of it because the world where Vontical lived is wiped out. Or that's what everyone thinks was supposed to happen. A scribbled historical record claims that in the 493rd year of Kyle's reign, Tackle was born as Baron Soli's second son. Then, right after, Tackle jolts awake and can't move a single part of his body, panicking about where he even is, while someone mutters that his voice sounds horribly off. Tackle spots a hand pushing out of him, but he can't make sense of it. Then it clicks, and panic explodes in his head. He's a baby now. A system prompt suddenly pops up, demanding you choose yes or no. Dent breaks it all down. His authority kicks in the instant the execution starts, and the spacetime transfer gets powered by spacetime magic pushed to its absolute limit. Then all the territory appraisal details are sealed in a book, chronicling the history of the Soulless Barony. His soul, his body, and every scar of the Soli Barony's past get moved as one straight into a brand new vessel, while his old body gets obliterated. But maxing out the transfer magic triggers brutal backlash once he uses it. Both the spacetime magic and his bloodline magic get sealed tight. Tackle doesn't remember how he ended up trying bloodline magic as a last shot, but the moment the option shows up, he still throws his heart into choosing yes. The system locks in the choice and declares that spacetime transfer is starting right now, so Tackle's mind races, wondering if he really got reborn through bloodline magic, but something feels horribly wrong. Right at the final second, Tackle finally gets it. He actually did it, and you can feel those prayers pouring strength into him as a book called Soli's Barren History materializes in front of his eyes. He swears he can almost see his father, his mother, his siblings, and every teammate he fought beside like they're right there again. At this point, he stops caring about composure for good, because he can finally see everyone's faces again, so one person blurts that there's no atmosphere at all. Just a baby, meaning of course he's bawling his eyes out. And the Tackle finally spirals and totally crumples in full breakdown sobs. Tackle's mom scoops him up and fires back. "What's wrong, honey?" And the second he sees her, he knows her instantly. It's his mother gone at just 35, wiping out when he was only 16. So in his eyes, she's still barely 19, and he just freezes, staring at her in total, breathless shock. His mother lights up and insists they eat together, smiling sweetly as she asks if he's been hungry the whole time, and baby Tackle just stares at her, completely baffled. Then it all snaps inside him. He protests that the guy ahead might look like a baby, but underneath, he's got the body of a middle-aged man, and then he snaps at her to stop. But then his mom breaks in with this bright, cheerful, "Is little Tackle-chan hungry?" And Tackle's thinking, yeah, right. Hunger's the last thing on the table. Meanwhile, out beyond the glass, the Soli's manor looms under a gloomy, cloudy sky. But no matter how hard he protested, Tackle couldn't silence his baby instincts and finally gave in to being fed. He's racking his brain, desperately trying to figure out what the heck he was trying to say in the first place. Then it hits him. He freezes mid-sentence, doubting everything he just said about being a man in his late 40s. An older-looking blonde young man steps into view, and it all clicks. He was executed at 20, so calling himself late 40s is straight up impossible. Tackle suddenly gets hit with a weird crawling sensation, and shattered flashbacks explode in his head, adults' legs passing by, Tackle himself as a baby scooting around, a coworker working late behind a desk, crowds surging, piles of documents and books until it all clicks, and his eyes go wide in pure shock. More memories crash to the surface. Takeshi spots people packed in a room, a body sprawled in bed, and a lone figure hunched over a desk beneath a flickering lamp in the dark. He finally understands what he's seeing now, and the haze breaks as the memories sharpen into focus. Suddenly, that desperate memory crashes in his hands, groping for something, his scream tearing out as he begs. Why did it have to happen when everything was finally about to start? He'd just convinced himself things were going right, and that he could finally calm his wife. These are Nishita Takahiro's memories, and baby Tackle just sits there, eyes wide, trying to process the bombshell, because this isn't just a story, it's his life before he was even born, back when he was still Tackle. Baby Tackle's face twists in pure worry and pain, and Takahiro's mind finally catches up to what happened to his wife, because if he's gone, his child won't have anyone. The baby is all alone now, and tears flood his face as the reality crushes his heart. Then right when he's breaking, someone reaches down gently, shushing him with a soft, "Takahiro-chan, don't cry." Tackle's eyes lock on the doorway, and there she is, his mother leaning in with a warm, gentle smile as she assures him, "Mommy's right here." Baby Tackle gapes up at her, barely a teenager, while tears stream down her cheeks. Then a hand swoops in and wipes them away, and a dark-haired man with a warm smile tells her she's ruining that handsome face of hers. Tackle clocks the figure instantly, Baron Solis, his father, beaming down at him with raw, real affection. Then the whole scene flips into playful chaos. Someone shouts for Dalek to stop it while the families finally huddle together, jamming with Baby Tackle, his mom, his dad, and what looks like a sibling, all trying to coax him out of the upset and get him smiling. The distraction hits, and Baby Tackle blurts out that his tears are gone. Then his whole face lights up with a real smile as the family's warmth wraps around him. Meanwhile, the whole family crowds onto the couch, father, mother, Baby Tackle, and all the siblings sharing a calm, cozy slice of home life bliss. But then Baby Tackle's eyes blow wide. Reality slams back in, and he knows exactly how tragic this family's fate is going to be. Questions batter his fragile mind. Will he lose everything again? Will he be forced to relive the same crushing sadness and brutal pain all over once more? Baby Tackle's face hardens with pure iron resolve. He's not letting that nightmare happen. No way. He's steering himself away from the tragic future that crushed the Baron's family in the last history. In his mind, he sees the shadow of the person he used to be, and now he's ready to rewrite history because he's got two weapons in his hands, what he knows from the past, and the modern knowledge it unlocks. With both, he'll carve out a brand new timeline and bring his family back safe. Baby lunges in and traps those tiny hands as light swells between them. He'll burn through everything he's got to trigger his authority and claw back his time-space. Transfer skill. As Tackle plans the new future he'll crawl back to from that first past, a shadowy figure drifts into his mind in flowing robes right beside the thought of Yuko, waiting for him there. A memory hits hands reaching over a meal table, plates set from the life of Takahiro, and with his wife Yuko at his side, he's ready to carve out a brand new future. As Nishida Takahiro, his resolve hardens into something unbreakable, even though the little kid version of him still can't do much. Yet he's got time to line up countermeasures, because once he chooses to stride into this new future, it's set in stone. The Kyle calendar flashes year 496, and Tackle is finally 3 years old, so his mother spots him at it again, reading like he can't stop. And he's shocked that the kid just started talking not long ago, yet he's already gobbling up books like a walking genius. She says she's got more work waiting and tells him to be a good boy, and Zach Hill just promises he will. As Tackle keeps reading, he realizes he's finally won his freedom. Everything around him clicks into focus. He's learned to read faster than anyone, and even trapped in this kid's body, he's tearing through books like they're the only thing keeping him alive. Meanwhile, the Esther domain sprawls out ahead of him, untamed stretches, still unfinished, but huge and thriving. This is the land run by his family, the Solis Baronial House. The Solis Baronial House. The civilization here looks like medieval Europe from before the Industrial Revolution, straight up the kind of thing you'd expect from a fantasy world. The mansion isn't exactly palatial, but it's far from shabby, solid, respectable, and exactly the kind of place you'd swear exists in an old-school fantasy tale. Then a mysterious figure stands in a cloak of glowing magic, because here, magic isn't just real, it's worshipped, and the nobles wear it like a badge of power. The powers that prove a lord is truly noble, split into two big categories, authority and bloodline magic. Every noble house is tied to a signature skill that matches its lord's power. Family members unlock the exact same elemental magic he wields, and once it's claimed, it never vanishes. And when all these relatives rally with blessings for the land and the people, that's what forges authority. It's the name for the power surge that kicks in when a lord's land hits a certain level of growth and loyalty, so the Solis baronies past earned it a blessing of authority, and now this reincarnation returns with bloodline magic. Tackle glances at the book in front of him, grinning like he's just found treasure because this whole setup screams fantasy light novel. and it instantly puts a warm bounce in his step. Then Tackle decides to tackle the 5 calamities, first scratching together every lead he can from the Baronial Chronicles, plus other books and even his own memories, until he finally lines them up on a timeline, and the whole picture snaps into place. The Kyle calendar logs it all year. 503 brought floods to the Org River, tore through the granary region, and crushed the towns at its heart. Then the Empire's war hit hard. Kyle's brother died in battle, and the Baron's forces got smashed so badly they barely stood. Then, in the year 506, a plague swept through and ripped his father, mother, sister, and the steward away, killing 20 of the entire population. In 509, a brutal famine hit, and the land collapsed into chaos as another 20 of the people fled in terror or starved to death. Then, in year 512, a massive imperial invasion crushed everything execution followed, and the entire baronial line was wiped clean off the map. Tackle can only sit there and go, "It's disaster after disaster after disaster." Suddenly, Tackle hurls books into the air in pure frustration, shouting that there's no way he can fight the weather or his enemies. An aside reveals that ever since Tackle was a baby, he'd sometimes just drop off with his head in his hands, and every single time, his mom and the maids would freak out, calling it Tackle-chan's ridiculously cute pose. The maids can't stop squealing over how adorable Tackle-sama is, and when they see him finally strike that precious pose again after ages, they lose it. While the world is drowning in piled-up disasters, year 503's flood takes top priority. But Tackle can't slow down because he's got to dig up intel on the international scene to prep for Griffonia's invasion, and the danger hangs over everything. Massive, unavoidable General Weiss is the worst of it. They call him the ever-victorious general, and in the last history, he led the Imperial Army to invade Esther. Then barely anything is known about him. Tackle stares at the timeline in front of him. 5 years left before the first calamity hits the Great Flood. There has to be a way. Tackle clenches his small fist, eyes locked in determination. He's going to make it happen. More than 2 years drag by, and back when Tackle still thought his own way, everything changed. But now he's 5, and while the other kids have grown up, they're all tumbling around the yard with his siblings. It's year 498 of the Kyle calendar, and Tackle is drowning in rage trying to steady his nerves and whip his chaos into order, buried in mountains of books and scattered papers. The disaster timeline snaps into focus, and the man finally lays everything bare. In the year 499, a bumper harvest sent wheat prices plummeting and crushed everyone's income. Then boom, a volcanic eruption from a nearby country spewed ash that choked the land, sparked drought, and turned famine loose across the region, until even the nearby lords started fighting each other, letting chaos and discord explode. That chain of events fueled the invasion by their own neighbor, and the battlefield fight turned into tragedy. His brother paid the price. But they got hammered so hard they lost 40 of their forces. Then, in 503, the Org River burst its banks, wiping out their whole granary region, and even the central town. Suddenly, Tackle snaps and sees the pattern, because that fight with the neighboring lord a year ago isn't something he can shrug off. Not when it sets everything in motion later. And then, just when things should slow down, the next year hits with even worse trouble, piling on fast. Off year 499 was supposed to be a golden harvest, but the prices tanked hard and smashed everyone's income. And then the next year hit like a nightmare, a brutal famine. Now the history of Baron Solus's domain hits way harder, because Tackle is actually living it. There's no way he could have snagged intel on the territory or the household back then, since in the last timeline he was just some kid hanging around at this exact point. While he's working, his mother barges in right in the middle of it. Tackle blurts out an apology for interrupting her, but she snaps back, asking what he's doing. Then Tackle makes a choice. He'll start with what he can handle. His mother tells him he can ask for anything, practically glowing because he's coming to her with a favor, and she's already thinking how adorable he is again today. Then Tackle drops a bomb. Most civil officials can't even last a second against her demon mode. Tackle leans in and tells her, "I've got a favor to ask, and it's pretty important." He gets it kicking things off with a construction project might look pathetic at first, but the truth is, there's no other way to tackle what has to be done. He asks to visit the workshop and head into town, and the second his mother flashes that smile, you know the wheels are already turning. A few days later, she finalized the plans. Then Tackle got the green light to head into the city of Est, but only if he agreed to 2 rules first: act like a true noble, or someone would definitely remind him to clean up his manners, and Tackle quickly used an excuse to bail out. Then the second condition hits, and 2 breathless female servants rush forward, shouting for Lord Tackle, who immediately turns and acknowledges them. One of them is Anne the maid, and she's the one riding shotgun with him on his trip to the city. Tackle and Anne roll into the city of Est, and the blonde kid's jaw drops all over again at just how packed the place is today. So this is Est, the biggest city in all of Esther, crammed right against the Kyle Kingdom's southernmost border, boxed in by towering walls, with a bustling plaza dead center, and the Lord's mansion looming at the very back. Tackle can barely keep up in the chaos. Est is the region's launchpad where mining, agriculture, and trade all feed straight through, turning this place into the non-stop heart of everyone's income. Then they roll up to a food stall, and the auntie starts serving up mouth-watering local dishes. Tackle's eyes light up, and he tells her it looks absolutely delicious. A server hollers for Lord Tackle, and without missing a beat, he whips around to face Anne. He asked her if she wanted to grab a bite together. Then, without warning, something dark and weird surged inside him. That moment, he took a bite of this street food. His past life as Nishita Takahiro, born into common blood, started stirring inside him again. That memory slams into him. He used to stare as a young master from a baronial family watch servants eat, and now he's living it from the noble side. At the stall, a woman swoops in and offers one for them too, claiming she'll only hand over 3 that the Baron's family approves, yet Anne nudges Tackle to move, brushing it off with a quick excuse, and as they start backing away, someone apologizes for jolting them. The 2 of them step out and drift through Est's streets in total silence, soaking up every sight as they push toward their destination. Anne is the headmaid's daughter working for the Solis family, and Tack Hill just can't help feeling weirdly awkward around her. From the moment she was a kid, they hammered her with strict lessons training her to become a maid. No excuses. And on top of everything, she's got a natural killer instinct for martial arts, especially the sword so good that regular soldiers don't even have a prayer once blades start flying. Her father, an actual sergeant in the standing army, pounded self-defense into her day after day as she grew up. Anne's only 15, and she's just stepped into her new life as Tackle's personal maid right after her apprenticeship. Plus, she's apparently a beast at both the cleaning and the fighting. Now they're cutting through the city streets, and while she's on guard, Tackle can't stop wrestling with something heavy. The last time he saw Anne in his second life was the day they executed him right here in this same city. In the old timeline, Anne started out as Dalek's exclusive maid and bodyguard, his right-hand protector, and the 2 of them drilled swordplay in the courtyard day after day, swinging steel like they were born for the same rhythm. Then 3 years later, Dalek was gone killed in battle, yet he still ended up serving Tackle's sister, Clycia, and not even long after, Clycia was taken by illness too. By 30, Anne had stepped in as headmaid after her mother died in the plague, and after losing 2 masters back-to-back, grief swallowed her whole. Tackle takes it all in as he walks through the city with her, and it hits him somehow. Right now, he's already rewired history. Suddenly, Anne spots something strange and fires off a question to Lady Tackle. What's wrong? Tackle snaps back fast, that it's nothing, then tells her to move on right now. Tack Hill lays it out. Anne is a dignified, dead quiet, red-haired super beauty, like she doesn't even need to try. She finally admits that the moment she became his exclusive attendant, she hated him, because whenever he does something unworthy of a noble, she calmly tears into him with venom, and somehow the way she scolds him is totally different. While Anne's parents keep showering Tackle with praise, he just sits there thinking, this non-stop praise feels like it's killing me. Tackhill apologizes again, throwing his hands up and admitting it's all his fault for not acting like a real noble. So now he started calling her Anne the Ice Woman, all on his own. He trusts her, of course, but fear still pricks at him. And while all this is happening, Tackle realizes he has to watch his behavior even in the workshop, because he's sure his parents think Anne will keep him in line. They finally step into the workshop, and bam! Workshop Chief Geld is waiting, all muscle and a thick beard, arms locked across his chest. Geld snaps at Takild that this isn't a playground for a noble young master. Tackle bursts in with a bright grin, calling himself Tackle, second son of the Baron, showing up for a visit to the workshop and cracking jokes that they'll probably think he's just some noble brat clowning around, and shoots the situation down with sharp displeasure as Geld lets out a stern, warning sound. Tackle's wondering if Geld's the kind who gets bossed around at home by his wife. Then Antel gets to freely look around for as long as he wants, just as long as it doesn't mess with their work. Or, more to the point, as long as it doesn't distract him from doing exactly what he wants. Tackles calls out the moment they step into the workshop. Inside, Geld chews out a worker with brutal fury, grilling him over how anyone could hand a customer work like that, then orders it redone and snaps. How many times do I have to say the same thing? Tackhill tries to grab their attention, but the shouting won't stop, and warns Lord Tackle that this whole mess feels way too dangerous. Then Geld shoots back instantly, swearing it's all fine, like totally fine. He felt that nostalgic tug in his chest for a second, caught himself, then waved it away like, nah, forget it. Inside the workshop, Tackhill stares as Gelt unleashes full force yelling at the workers, and the whole place hits him like deja vu. So familiar, it drags him back to a black company he once knew. He's not exactly thrilled by it, but the setup feels weirdly familiar, like he's seeing the same nightmare again. The very next day rolls in and the workers huddle up, whispering about what kind of noble son Tackle really is, while Geld watches, stunned, as the kid isn't even fazed by the brutal workshop air. Geld greets tone hits with shock. "You're back again." And in the side whispers, someone even says they thought Tackle would have gotten bored after just one visit. But Tackle snaps it off fast, waving it away like it's nothing. Tackle keeps calling out in his head, locked on the Ice Woman, but as he watches everything play out, it hits him. She's not chasing him at all. She's shielding him, in her own icy way. Wood chips and sawdust spray across the workshop floor as work grinds on, and the air stays tense. Geld isn't exactly friendly today. Still, Tackle refuses to fold or quit. He says he'll just sit back and wait until Geld is finally free to talk. Then a worker marches up to Tackle and asks what kind of hardwood it is, so Tackle hesitates, admits he's tied up at the moment, and says he's still trying to sort everything out. Then another worker blurts that the delivery date is almost here, demanding to know what they're going to do about this mess, while Geld just keeps glaring at Tackle in dead silence. The young lord glances back, and Geld lets out a quiet little acknowledgement. Then, out of nowhere, a worker yells for the young master, and Tackle snaps into action at once. His hand clenches with raw determination until Geld leans in and straight up asks if he likes woodworking, and Tackle immediately decides to play along. But wait, there's a twist. Tackle confesses there's one thing he's truly chasing, and he snaps to the truth. Saying "I like it" won't land the real message. This isn't just about enjoying woodworking. He pauses. Then he leans in and demands to know if everything he wants to create has to be built out of real wood. You just throw your answer out with full confidence. Yeah, it's gotta be wood. Geld's face snaps with shock at the kid's voice, pure grit and zero doubt, and he straight up questions Tackle, asking if it's really true. After that talk, Tackle starts hitting the workshop almost every single day. One day, Geldgreet leaned in and told the young man, straight up, that he was working his tail off. Tackle drops to Master, swears she won't mess with his work, and begs him to take care of her today too right there. That moment lights a spark, and Tackle starts getting Geld's attention way more often, and that's how he lands as a real, trusted buddy of the workshop master. Meanwhile, Anne can't stop weighing whether she should show him that thing now or later. Tackle, meanwhile, admits he's gotten close to the other craftsmen too, and they're treating him like a kid, which gets messy fast when you remember just how old he actually is. Geld stares at what Tackle just showed him, then blurts out, "What the heck is this?" Tackle tells them he wants to craft a wood that shrugs off wear and tears something tough, and he demands to know if such wood exists, and how he can shape it into a perfect round. Anne watches from the sidelines and thinks, I just can't pull this off like he does not even close. Geld shouts for Carl, barrels into the first one who answers, and snaps, "What's going on?" When Geld says Carl's still new but loaded with talent, he leans in and asks if the young master will let them put their guy, Carl, to work. A dark-haired young guy in craftsman gear steps forward, and Geld points him out, telling Tackle to please look after Carl. Carl and Tackle clasp hands, and Carl blurts, "Same here, so nice to meet you." Later, Tackle strides out of the mansion and yells after his dad and mom that he's heading out, wishing them a great day. Back inside, his parents start trading worried thoughts. Tackle's mom points out that their son isn't the kind of kid who usually comes asking for favors. His father snaps back that if he wants to do it, why not let him after all? It's his choice. Then they both notice it lately. He's been slipping into and out of the workshop nearly every day, fretting over whether Tachiel is really okay. Tackle's supposed quick trips to the workshop drag on for 3 whole months because every time he talks with his parents, the back and forth just keeps rolling, and the visits never stop. Inside, he works shoulder to shoulder with Carl and the other craftsmen, tweaking pieces and asking, "Is this the right angle?" as he adjusts and mutters that it needs just a little more like that. The workers cheer him on, saying if he thinks it's right, then it absolutely is. The giant model they've been building, way too massive to be any kid's toy, finally hits completion, and the workers erupt in wild celebration. A few days later, Tackle is suddenly given a chance to speak in the mansion's courtyard, and the shock written across his face makes it clear he never saw this coming. The butler bows and thanks everyone for carving out time from their packed days, and Tackle's mom and dad stand there in full formal attire looking super official until someone blurts, "Wait, there's one more person here." Another voice cuts in, saying they want to hear Lord Tackle's proposal too, so they jump in and join the chorus. Tackle's face twists with pure confusion as this wild new addition steps into his audience. Raymond, the steward running the soulless barony's internal affairs and the whole household like a machine. This isn't some random guy either. In that place, he's basically second only to Tackle's dad and mom. And here's the kicker. Raymond served Tackle's mother even before she ever married into the family, proving his worth years before he fully belonged. He still climbed like he couldn't be stopped, hitting the 3rd rank in his 20s, which is flat out unreal. Raymond tells Tackle he can't wait to see what his workshop work turns into, and Tackle nods along, then drops the truth he needs to be honest. "Please," someone tells Raymond, "be gentle." Another voice chimes in that the pressure is through the roof. Now and then, Tackle's mind snaps back because in his old life, he wasn't even good to Raymond at all. Back when Tackle's parents were still alive, he kept hauling proposals to them again and again, but Raymond shot them full of holes every time until Tackle couldn't even get a word out. Then, one by one, Raymond finally greenlit every proposal, folding them into his own domestic policies, and the whole ordeal nearly shattered Tackle's spirit. The narration paints Raymond as this bright, blonde heartthrob, stunning, freakishly skilled at his job, and so in tune with his master, he might as well be mind-reading without even lifting a finger. He's basically the ultimate overqualified steward, nailing every piece that makes a character popular, right down to those beauty marks that seal the deal, and the maids absolutely swoon for him, while Tack Hill can't believe it, because back then, Raymond didn't even realize he'd been that big of a deal. Meanwhile, Tackle steadied himself and swore, "I'm grown up on the inside now," even if his face still screams kid. He admits he's not the best with Raymond, but one thing's clear, this guy is rock solid, and Raymond's involvement here takes everyone by surprise, but it's a golden shot. Tackle swivels to Anne and begs her to start, and Anne fires back with an instant yes. Then Tackle slams the mechanical device onto the stage and demands everyone stare at it, because this wild contraption is a jaw-dropping web of gears and moving parts. As he moves, Tackle can't help thinking Mr. Raymond isn't just helpful, he's a total game-changer for rewriting history. He's gonna need Raymond on his side, so Tackle locks in, determined to flip him into an ally, right here, right now. Meanwhile, the story flips straight into Raymond's head, and he remembers his first read on Lord Tackle. That kid was downright creepy. Ever since Tackle was small, he'd stare at Raymond with those nervous, watchful eyes, and when he forced his words out in that shaky, stumbling way, Raymond couldn't help but feel this strange, sour kind of cute, the unsettling sort. Raymond keeps mulling over young Tackle, and somehow the kid earns trust everywhere he goes, turning every single person he meets into an ally. Even the townspeople and the sharp merchants who come knocking at the mansion, So Raymond handed Anne the maiden training he'd saved for his firstborn Dalek and shoved it onto Tackle instead, then made her report back on everything Tackle did each day, because from that moment on, every single day turned downright astonishing. Raymond watched Lord Tackle hammer out tools he'd never seen before, and he wasn't just making rare inventions, he was cooking up something wild. As Raymond stared at the workshop roaring with gears and ticking mechanisms, with Anne right beside him, it finally hit him. This was the kind of power that could truly save the territory. Story. Meanwhile, Baron Soli fixes his gaze on that colossal contraption and demands to know what the heck it is. Then he whips around and demands, "Tackle, what in the world is this thing?" And Tackle tells him it's a lifting water wheel and a power water wheel. He tells them he'll break down how the lifting water wheel works first. Then Tackle shows it in action. First, the water wheel drops under the current and spins like it's alive. Then it thrusts water into the system, forcing it up to a higher level than ever before. As the water wheel spins, driven by the rush of water, the gear grips on and shifts its spin direction. Then it keeps turning sideways, right toward the ground. The shaft whirls and the rod jerks up and slams down over and over. People in the comments clock that Tackle's acting like a proud parent, hovering over their kid's science project, pointing out Krisha can play house too. And then they hit the big question, since Dalek already knows how to swing a sword, what should they even do next? They fret about spoiling the kids, and one person snaps that Tackle's way of thinking is straight up old school. That shocking moment with the water wheel water lifting water clicks in their minds, and suddenly they realize they can pump water uphill to spots higher than the river itself. Tackle tells everyone they can finally send water to those dead, useless lands that never worked as farmland until this moment. Raymond leans in and tells Tackle's mother that she and her husband finally figured out this isn't just some kid's toy. Then Tackle breaks it down this water wheel, and its gears let the work run on its own. No more hand labor, like it can keep going non-stop. And he even gives an example. If they crack it open to power a millstone, they can churn out flour by the truckload. So someone leans in and straight up asks Lord Tackle how he thinks that would help. Raymond can't stop thinking about what all of this could mean. A map flashes on screen, packed with marked spots, Lax, the Orc River, Esther, and Phobos. While the explanation hits hard, if even one of those places gets wiped out, the damage won't be measurable, because Esther's granaries are all stacked in one location, and that surge in production, plus automation, ties straight into how the whole territory's economy rises or falls. Raymond leans in to Tackle and says it straight. This kid somehow already knows one of the territory's biggest problems. Tackle admits he learned it from a book about countries that still use water wheel systems, and Raymond fires back, asking where in the world Tackle picked up that knowledge. Meanwhile, Raymond studies Tackle and wonders if using the kid the right way in the Kyle Kingdom could level up the whole territory. And the second he locks eyes with him, something about the child feels totally off. Staring at Tackle's intense, honest face, Raymond suddenly gets it. This kid didn't build those inventions just to play around or prove a point. It's like Tackle sees a threat on the horizon and is scrambling to dodge disaster before it hits Raymond. Can't stop wondering what's running through his head and whether Tackle has some kind of magic, like future prediction, or something even stranger. Raymond's mind clicks into place as he stares at Tackle standing there in the middle of all this chaos, like Lord Tackle's shoulders are loaded with a secret burden nobody else even dares to notice. Raymond zooms in on the danger because Tackle is still just a kid. He can't carry this alone, and grown-ups won't take him seriously anyway. So Raymond decides it's his job to back Tackle up, both where everyone can see it and where only he can. Raymond steps up to Tackle to hash it out, and the kid shoots him a hungry, hopeful stare. Raymond pushes for action right now. Lock in the water wheel plans and crank production up fast. Tackle nods, feeling the rush hit, because he can already tell things are about to get insanely busy. Then, Tackle's face ignites with gratitude and pure relief. He turns to Raymond and thanks him from the bottom of his heart for having his back. Raymond flashes a smile at Tackle and just nods like, yeah, he's locked in. Then the camera swings to Tackle strolling off through the mansion halls while Anne stands right there, watching him like she knows something's about to snap. The next day, with Raymond backing him like a wall, they kicked off the survey of the installation site, and before long, the workshop had officially ordered a huge batch of water wheels then. Just a few months later, shipment after shipment started rolling in. The Solis family sprang into action. Tackle's father sprinted into the hunt for fresh wholesale customers for flour, determined not to miss a single business shot, while Tackle's mom and Raymond drove land development forward and lined up the irrigation work that would make everything grow. Tackle stands his ground, eyes burning with purpose because that first arrow that will rewrite history has just been fired, and deep in his head he's already vowed to hunt down and conquer the 5 great calamities of the early period. Months slid by, and weeks before the great harvest landed, people busted their backs across the whole territory, grinding away in non-stop prep and development under a tight, never-ending siege of work. Tackle stayed locked in and relentlessly determined, swearing to himself that he wouldn't fall behind after that construction delay a few days back. Tackle had already started building a water wheel-powered flour mill, and the water wheel demo went off without a hitch, so new farmland and irrigation projects were rolling across the estuary until Tackle snapped to it before the bumper harvest hit. There was one last thing he had to pull off. Tackle ranted that the barony should have snatched up truckloads of cheap wheat the moment the great harvest crashed the prices. This was the perfect buy low, sell high play, so they could stash cash for whatever disasters came next instead of just waiting around for famine. To make that plan work, he had to come up with a real reason to buy up all that wheat, so he decided to manufacture a product just to justify the move. His goal was wild-billed dried noodles that could sit for ages and still taste amazing with just hot water, and use wheat-based preserved food as the key. In the Solis Barney kitchen, Tackle burst in and greeted Miguel, the head chef. Miguel, all muscle and dark hair, shot his head up and asked the kid, "You back again?" Miguel was a soldier who'd marched through the same war as Tachiel's father, fighting side by side back then, and even on a battlefield. He somehow cooked up magic with whatever scraps he had. Then he took a wound in battle, and Tachiel's father invited him to switch swords for a chef's knife right into the kitchen. Miguel and Tackle's father were so tight that he treated Tackle like family. And when Tackle finally asked Miguel what was wrong, he spilled the truth he'd been wondering if he could make preserved food with everything they had. Miguel asked if Tackle could borrow some ingredients, and Miguel told him, sure then. He laid out exactly what was needed: flour, water, and salt. Next, he explained the steps: roll it out, dry it, repeat, and even admitted it was a wild idea. But once it worked, that territory would be churning out tons of flour from then on. Tackle lifted the dried noodles like they were a secret weapon, convinced Miguel was exactly the help he needed, and if this worked, that recipe might even charge onto the battlefield. And Miguel was a battlefield pro when it came to portable rations. Tackle learned before he even hit 5 that he couldn't rely on himself for a second. And even all the old stories and fancy modern tech couldn't save him by themselves. To rewrite history, he needed the muscle of trusted allies and skilled prose people ready to team up and move as one. From that moment on, it was trial and error non-stop for the two of them. Miguel dove into everything he could, tweaking salt ratios and testing every drying method until he finally found something that worked. Tackle dug in, going all in with the noodles until the real twist hit. His parents had forced a promise that he'd never waste food, so every leftover and failed experiment he'd tried ended up back on his plate, and the kid fought for every bite, basically struggling just to get it down. After weeks of brutal struggle, Tackle finally struck gold, tasted victory, and declared, "Yeah, this is actually good." Tackle was ecstatic. He'd barely made it in time for the big harvest, and he immediately thanked Miguel for every bit of help. At family dinner, Tackle sat there and replayed every brutal challenge he'd survived because the Kyle Kingdom was landlocked, so getting dashi ingredients was a nightmare, and this world had zero soy sauce or miso either. If something tasted off, it wasn't his imagination, it was the seasoning missing in action. Right at the table, someone brought up the real trouble Clizia wanted to eat too. That's when Tackle finally clocked it. He needed one last push, the kind of selling point that would make his father snap and say, done. Tackle's eyes sharpened the instant it clicked. Bamboo might be the key. Picture this: bamboo tubes that could store food and cook it too, and boom. That's the spark that brings instant noodles to another world. People kept assuming monster habitats would just keep growing, so they started chopping bamboo and handing it out like building material and bamboo. Leave it alone and it'll spread like wildfire. Green bamboo was ridiculously easy to snag down south of the Ester territory. A massive bamboo forest sprawled out. and it doubled as the border to the demon realm, where the monsters lurked. Demand tanked, probably thanks to the picture problems, and suddenly bamboo was piled up in surplus, so Tackle decided, let's make cup noodles. He punched a hole in a cut bamboo tube and stuffed it with dried noodles, poured in water with Miguel's special seasoning, then boiled the whole thing over an open fire, and when it was done, they dug in warm, juicy soup with noodles packed with flavor, and the smell alone was straight up irresistible. Tackle thought it was an omikuji fortune at first, but chaos hit at one point. The noodles just refused to come out. So Miguel stepped in again and got the cup noodles finished without any trouble, then kept humming in the kitchen while he cooked. And Tackle raised that bamboo noodle cup like it was a master key, absolutely sure his father would snap into action with wide, shocked eyes. He'd named them omikugi noodles, and now he could pitch the whole thing to his father as wartime logistics, dressed up as disaster preparedness. Suddenly, Tackle caught a sharp sound. Then bam! A crushing crash hit, and the bamboo cup plummeted to the ground. He couldn't wrap his head around what was happening. When Tackle finally figured out that the wetness in the green bamboo was the culprit, frustration hit him hard right in the face because the setback crushed his momentum. If he used dried bamboo as the container, though, the whole thing would just ignite and burn away. So he had to ditch bamboo completely, and whatever he picked next had to be cheap and easy to grab. In the end, Tackle sagged down in defeat. Praying that the world hadn't phased out styrofoam, I still had to swallow that awful experience. Then months stretched into one brutal year, and at last the harvest exploded in glory, right when the 5 great calamities from before finally kicked off again. Then bam, a title card slams on screen, laying out the tale of the soulless barony, the omen of destruction. It tells how, in Kyle year 499, autumn painted the land with a glorious harvest until too much goodness curdled into disaster, and smiles soured into resentment. And just as a new year of blessings started, black ash from a neighboring country choked the skies of Esther. Out in the wheat fields, with 6-year-old Tackle right beside him, the Baron grins like it's already a win at this rate. They're about to pull off a killer harvest this year. Tackle shoots back that he can't wait for the autumn harvest. But later, the Baron inspects the grain and spots something way off. He brings up ash from the Griffonia volcano and prays it won't turn nasty. The air feels downright ominous. Tackle is only 6 years old in this timeline. Ashfall from a tiny volcano in the neighboring Griffonia Empire has finally started, and Tackle has been waiting right on the edge of this exact moment. Anne strides up to Tackle and tells him the proposal meeting is almost here. Tackle shoots her a grateful nod, then gets ready, because as he gears up, he can't stop thinking about his choice. He's using this whole asphalt mess to force his own proposal forward. He really needed to spark a real sense of crisis before he could fire that next move. Now, in the barony of Tsurus's own history, the ashfall fizzled fast. No real damage, no big chaos, just a quick scare. But here's the kicker: this year is set to explode with an unheard-of harvest. And the very next year, a brutal famine is waiting right around the corner. Tackle realizes they've got to claw their way through this massive famine, because if they stumble here, all hope of surviving what's coming next will be shattered for good. They're already mass-producing flour and pushing portable preserved foods into the market, and it's going smoothly, yet that won't cut it by itself, because they're not banking on help from any neighboring countries or other territories. The scene snaps to 2 neighboring nobles, Viscount Kokuman and Viscount Mimibai High, both glaring with their family crests on full display. And everyone can feel it. The soulless barony has exploded in growth over the last decade, but these 2 Viscounti don't exactly respect them. Yeah, someone says, and another voice immediately fires back. Let's go. The tension is so thick, it's practically choking the air. Meanwhile, the only friendly neighbor, Cornell Barony, cranks up agriculture even harder than Esther ever did, and the southern Griffonia Empire. They're basically stuck at war nonstop, so yeah. That idea's dead on arrival. So yeah, there was no one coming to save them. They had to fight through the brutal famine on their own. The story snaps to Sully's barony conference room. Tackle stands there shaking with nerves, and his mother plus the rest of his family crowd in from every side. The vibe hits totally different than his water wheel presentation, way more brutal, way more intense. Tackle realizes he's only 6 years old, but here he is about to barge into the control of the whole territory while someone else in the room looks genuinely worried about what he's about to do, and honestly, Tackle is nervous too. He knows this is nothing like that water wheel presentation. They're telling him the Esther territory didn't just get lucky. It's the result of his parents grinding for years, starting from a barely developed land with no real industry, when his father first received it as a patchwork of small towns and villages with nothing remarkable to show for it. But here's the real kicker. Tackle's dad is a spatial mage with storage so freaky he can stash the equivalent of several huge trucks in one place. And then there's Tackle's mom. She's an earth mage who specializes in land appraisal, so she can read the secrets of any land, meaning his father didn't outsource a thing. He personally traded with the harvests from the cultivated fields. Meanwhile, his mother unearthed and built up the mines, and suddenly their fortune shot up year after year. Then she kept pouring resources into new development projects, fueling a relentless boom that let the Esther territory expand until people swore it was better than even some higher-ranking viscounties. Some nobles laughed at the Baron as just a merchant, but the Lord jumping into trade like any merchant only made the Baron's eyes light up like he genuinely loves it. Meanwhile, inside the conference room, someone cheers about this year's massive harvest and how the villagers are over the moon. So Raymond steps in and congratulates Tackle's father on the great news. Tackle can't stop thinking about how his parents built this whole territory in just one generation, and now he's left wondering if his proposal will finally get the green light. The narrator breaks down how harvest economics work. Farmers hand over their cut grain as tax, then use what's left to grab seeds for next year and food to keep their families fed. Everything else gets sold to cash in and bring in income. But here's the twist. Tackle is getting hammered by a good harvest. In this world, taxes don't rise and fall with how much you reap. They're based on land size. So if the fields explode with crops, farmers split the bigger profits and the tax burden gets even uglier. Hit a bad year instead, and it flips the other way. That's exactly why Tackle can't catch a break. And it's the same with the Lord, only this time the stakes explode even bigger. If the harvest overflows, grain prices crash. And just like that, the farmer's income shrinks instead of surging. Someone jumps in and says a bumper harvest is exactly what they've been praying for. Then Tackle slams his proposal on the table, saying he's come with something he wants them to look at because a huge harvest can bring crushing problems with it. Someone corners Tackle and demands he lay out his reasons, those 3 points, straight up. Raymond realizes this move lets House Esther bulk up and strike first before the crisis hits, and he thinks a bumper harvest is the perfect opening for Tackle's 3 measures. Right now, the Baron finally relents and lets him lay it all out. Meanwhile, someone else can't help but wonder what Tackle is going on about now. Then he finally hits his first point: dried noodles. He suggests burying the stockpiles under dried noodles to brace for a food crisis now that grain prices are finally dropping. The perfect time has arrived to start cranking out preserved food. The work is still brewing right now. They're even cooking up dried noodles for the battlefield. And Takiel slaps a document down in front of his mother. They're even weighing the idea of paying farmers who've seen their incomes drop, so they'll step up for this work. Tackle acts like everyone already caught that. Then he tears into the second point. They built a Jisoo granary to stash grain for when harvests turn bad, and they didn't stop there. They set up an entire system to make it all run. He yanks out a diagram and lays it all out. The farmers hand their extra grain to the Jisoo, and the barony buys it for the exact same price as always, so the market gets less of a flood. Price drops get crushed, and the farmer's income stays steady. Meanwhile, all that grain is stockpiled and paid back when emergencies finally slam in. The farmers pocket the usual pay by turning over their leftover surplus, and the barony can even order them to stash it in the Jisoo for free. Then the Baron just can't stop thinking, wait, that's a wild idea. Raymond steps in to help, and Tackle thanks him like he always does. Then someone in the room snickers that it's not too shabby, before adding that if Tackle keeps this up, the Lord's gratitude and loyalty are going to be coming his way too. Tackle finally realizes it's the real deal now, and he charges straight into the third and last point. The The Baron leans in and tells him he's seen books claiming small-scale asphalt is basically the warning shot before a massive eruption. Tackle warns that if a massive eruption hits a neighboring country, crops will get wrecked and famine will slam straight into everyone's lives. When famine gets brought up, they snap into action with an instant, intense reaction. Tackle tells them to grab grain now while it's cheap. This year's the perfect chance to build up their supplies and make a smart play at the same time. The Baron's face twists with worry, and Tackle can't promise a thing, but he's almost certain it's coming. He thinks to himself that the whole book's story is a long shot, and even if he straight up admitted he knew the future, they'd never buy it. Tackle's still grinding over this for years, and this is the only move he can think of to finally get through to them, because even if there's no famine, he insists they should push commercialization as one of their next big industries. Tackle stands in the grand hall, letting the spotlights blaze down on him as dramatic silence hangs in the air. Then he shouts for them to believe his words. Suddenly, his mother's voice cuts through the air, shouting his name. Tackle's mother bursts in, yanks him into a tight hug, and tells him through tears in her voice that he's truly something special. Tackle snaps to attention, realizes it all, and blurts out to his mother in stunned disbelief. She yanks him close, breathless with gratitude for how hard he's been thinking about them, and tells him to step away from whatever's about to unfold next. Hold on. Once he catches the vibe, he'll chew on every word she throws at him. Then Baron Sola rips through the process. Police step in and tell him his afternoon plans just got flipped, and he snaps back that they're going to dig up the truth, because at last, everything's finally moving forward. Tackle thought he'd finally done something for his parents, like that moment where he's shown walking side by side with his father, a tiny figure beside the Baron. A feeling he'd carried in the back of his mind for ages. He can't stop thinking about that past version of himself from the previous timeline, the one who never even tried to do a thing. Was it the crushing feeling of being outshined by his brilliant brother and his parents? Or was he simply terrified to take the first step, and he kept fleeing until it was already far too late? And Nishita Takahiro felt that same gut punch. No matter how much he'd been given, he couldn't give anything back before the moment they were torn apart forever. Tackle can't stop thinking about his old life as Nishita Takahiro, just a regular, humble Japanese salaryman who somehow still found happiness with his beloved wife, even though they never had children. Ever since he was a kid, bullying crushed his confidence, so now he's stuck replaying everyone's opinions in his head, terrified to speak up for himself. And just when his hard work was supposed to pay off, coworkers swooped in and snatched it away, yanking him right off the road to promotion until, without even realizing it, he turned into one of those middle-aged, tidy house guys who spends every single day at home devouring light novels. For 20 years, he'd called her his wife Yuko, and now she'd stepped out to work, propping up their home after they'd lost their breadwinner, all while she urged him to stand up and seize a real shot instead of wasting his life on some half-hearted job. He just kept leaning on her encouragement, like it was the only thing holding him steady. Then his wife crumpled under the weight of overwork and stress, the exact demon he'd been fighting inside himself. When he finally clawed his way out of his coma and saw her haggard eyes full of worry over him, he broke down and wept. And right there, he hated himself for putting her through all of it. When he finally woke up, he threw himself into work with zero hesitation, grabbing every job he could find to get by, and step by step, his pay started to stabilize, bringing his wife's bright smile back, at last. Still, even nearing 50, he refused to slow down, burning himself out with a pace that was way too brutal. This time, he crumpled and vanished for good, leaving his wife behind. Listen, Nishita and Tackle aren't two people at all. They're both him, the same soul, wearing different names. He couldn't take one step forward, kept sprinting away from the truth instead of facing it, and by the time he finally dared to look ahead, it was already way too late. But this time, it's different now. He carries two people's regrets and two people's dreams for the future all crammed inside his heart. Step by step, he rearranges the world, fixing everything he messed up before. Meanwhile, the autumn of Kyle year 499 rolls in, and harvest time is seconds away from starting. Kyle Calendar found himself in the early autumn of 499, and finally, the great harvest season rolled in. The wheat in this world grew a little slower than the wheat back from his past life. So at first, the farmers cheered like they'd hit the jackpot with an unheard-of bumper crop. That spark of joy slowly curdled as anxious voices rose. Everyone feared the market prices were about to crash. Tackle's mother and Raymond stomped out the whole mess before it could blow up, ordering granaries to be built, which instantly soothed the farmers. And this plan was already rolling across the region, one granary after another. Maybe it even existed long before. Either way, Tackle was thrilled because they actually swallowed his story and lined everything up just like he'd promised. Then, right in line with what Barron's old historical record said, grain prices suddenly crashed hard in a massive drop. Tackle's mother and Raymond sprang into action at once, buying up the farmer's grain for more than the market price, then racing to build fresh dry noodle factories right beside the brand new water wheels in multiple towns, and pulling in struggling farmers to work as processed goods and preserved foods rolled into mass production. At first, Tackle just watched, but the moment that second strip of asphalt hit the ground, he snapped into action, seeing pure gold and calling it the perfect investment chance. Then he declared, "My time is now." After the market crash, he tore through the streets with eyes blazing, and his siblings couldn't help noticing he was thriving, because this is what spatial magic truly does, spatial storage packed with real power. Tackles. He was already plotting to move processed food right into the royal capital's knights' hands. Behind the scenes, he snatched wheat from other territories for cheap, all while keeping Baron Solis's name buried, so it never surfaced, like it was just a harmless market buy on the surface. But Raymond saw the truth. Tackle's tactics were flawless. Baron Solis, riding high in mood, yanked Tackle into his office and said, "If we rake in profits from wheat and preserved food, you get 10 of everything." Tackle's mother burst out in shock, and Chibi Tackle spun around like it was pure good luck, like a real blessing. Later, Tackle admitted he tried to recreate a scene from his favorite light novel, and his mother hit record on the spot, locked it in forever, and even though it was just a whim, Tackle was absolutely over the moon. But his father was absolutely repulsed by the whole thing. Baron Soli said it made perfect sense for a lord to act that way. Like, he figured it was fine since they totally changed their tune outside. Meanwhile, people were whispering like crazy, asking if this kind of job really had to be handled by those twin maids with short blue hair. He fretted that the grain market would collapse across the world, and his father kept pressing, demanding to know if this was truly okay. Tackle said it was just the territory, so he'd keep them swooping around the city outskirts, and someone else chimed in that honestly, that sounded awesome. Then Tackle's mother stared at the moment and realized it was exactly what she needed to set up the third arrow, while Tackle, deep inside, locked in his resolve. Later, Tackle marched up to his parents and demanded to check out the granary construction site, but Baron Solis shot it down fast. Tackle is only 6 and it's not safe out there. He insisted the Lord's boy shouldn't be risking himself just to chase after it. Tackle begged his mom and dad, swearing he really wanted to go. His mother pressed him, and Tackle snapped back, explaining that he and his brother would run the domain's internal affairs from here on out, and he swore the future had to be built by listening to the people firsthand. He'd even pitched a granary to help them, but deep down he couldn't read the pulse of the very people who would live with that policy. But then someone snaps the question, why does it have to happen now? The dark-haired man shoots back that no shiny excuse can erase the truth. Tackle is just using the farmer's fears for profit. Tackle demands he has to see it himself, right then and there, watching how the villagers are getting the news with his own eyes. Later, Tackle takes a hard look at how he prepped scrapping the childish wording he used on purpose before, so his speech suddenly lands way more grown up, and he's convinced it's the perfect excuse. Then someone leans in and asks, "That's it?" And the real fight starts because he battles his own struggles in silence. He can't stop wondering what he's missing. Then he spots a weird little smile on her face and blurts out, "What kind of reaction is that?" She's not flat out refusing, but something feels off. And the more he looks, the more he realizes it might be his own desperation leaking through. Then Tackle suddenly blurts, "I want to see the outside world too," dreaming of the Estelle land his mom and dad built up, and fuming that it's not fair his brother gets to go and he doesn't. But Tackle immediately realizes he screwed up. With age past 70, he blurted out almost by accident an excuse he'd already shut down in his own head, and the whole moment was painfully embarrassing until someone answered with a grin like, "Yeah, that's it. More like that." That's when Tackle finally clicks. If that's his mom's switch, then he's been swinging from the wrong side this entire time. His mother finally gives in, but she lays down the rules. He can step outside the city only if Raymond walks with him, and Anne has to tag along too, because safety comes first. She says all this is happening because he's been sneaking out with Dalek on his own lately. Then Chris barges in and cuts her off. Someone yanks his attention right away and tells him to stop, and Chris just fires back. How on earth could anybody not get that a younger brother wants to copy his older brother? While Tackle's mom presses him, asking if her permission ever left him unhappy, someone in the back blurts a warning, "Don't dare defy her." Then Tackle's father gives in and agrees, and Tackle fires back that he gets it, ordering him to stay out of Raymond's business and not waste a word on sight. And at last, Tackle's dream of riding alongside Raymond during the inspection finally comes true right then. The whole crew marches out, with Raymond, Anne, and Tackle heading through the streets shoulder to shoulder with their escort. Raymond lays it out. This world's crawling with monsters and ruthless bandits everywhere. Even when they stay in their own territory, danger still creeps in and could strike at any moment. But the Lord's young son was already headed out, so there was no backing down. They cranked up the guard team and watched him go with twice the protection. So Tackle drops an apology right after they crank up everyone's workload. Tackle still couldn't wipe the grin off his face. He finally got to leave town, but Raymond's escort permission was tight. Just 3 villages and 1 town near Est, all reachable in a single day trip. Tackle leans out of the carriage window, shouts to his father and mother that he's finally heading out, and as soon as they roll away, the whole inspection runs smooth under Raymond's watch. In the very first village they hit, Tackle once again fumbled by accident. Then Raymond swooped in and saved the day, cracking the whole thing open from the next village onward with maps and diagrams, laying out the old territory like it was right in front of them. Meanwhile, Tackle was itching to see Anne's reaction to that wink, but Raymond just sat there acting way too sure, like he fully believed Anne, and he would keep his rampage locked tight from his parents. Then that third arrow plan, the last weapon against the Great Famine, kicked in fast and paid off immediately. Raymond stepped in and landed the third arrow, and just like that, the inspection wrapped up with a clean win. Tackle shouted to his dad and mom again, calling out loud like he wouldn't stop. In late autumn, year 499 rolls in, Kyle and Tackle burst forward with a legendary turnip triumph, showing off his insane harvest to everyone nearby like it's the grandest prize on earth. They both break emotionally on the spot, completely wrecked by what they're seeing. While all this chaos brews, someone jokes that Tackle's about to get the title Farmer Baron, then swivels to Chris and asks, "So when did your family turn into farmers?" The comments blow up fast. People say it's just too much, especially with all that empty space in the mansion being shoved into this. But Tackle just keeps lifting that turnip, hyping it like it's treasure, saying turnips grow super easy, taste amazing, and you can even chow down on the leaves. To stop the food shortage in its tracks, he went all in on turnips, only to learn they're grown here purely as animal fodder, like a total waste of perfectly good food. And, get this, there's even a rumor that the brilliant strategist Yu Jiliang grew turnips right at his camp, and when someone brings up his name, they casually mention they've also got a soft spot for Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Tackle pieced it all together like a master plan. During his inspection, he ordered Raymond to dig into the cultivation status of different regions, because if he wanted to learn how to grow it right, he'd start by asking the locals. Then Tackle pestered his father to hunt down merchants who rolled into town, so he could score turnip seeds and even turnips themselves, while making sure to run the request through his mom first, of course. Then he told Miguel to dig up delicious cooking tricks and whip up recipes, and Tackle sifted through everything. The whole crew gathered. Now his dinner table is stacked to the brim with turnips. The plan is to scatter them all over the territory when the harvest turns bad-seeded everywhere, with the stored seeds right alongside them. While the compilation grind raged on, Tackle was out there running trial cultivation of his own. Tells him, "Buddy, you've got mud all over your face." And she even thanks her, cracking that his bodyguard is way overboard, like he's guarding him too hard. Tackle braced for Anne's brutal scolding, but when it hits, she's not tearing him down at all. She's pitching in and helping with the harvest. Tackle leans in and asks his brother, "You're not coming to harvest with us too?" After a tense beat of hesitation, his brother finally gives in and agrees. Then Tack Hill stands on a hill above the fields, already picturing disaster, because if he gets invited to a famine too, he knows it'll be a real problem. He's thrown everything he's got into the fight, so he steps up and dares the coming famine like, "Bring it on." Kyle Calendar's 500 arrives like a death sentence. Then the mountain god's wrath, a crushing black shadow, barges over the border and blankets the kingdom south, unleashing an all-out heavenly disaster. Dark clouds churn overhead, mercy never drops, and the land bakes dry. Soon, people waste away, starve in silence, and stagger from place to place, their hearts ripped apart by panic because the mountain god of Griffonia is nothing but pure blazing fury. In the spring of Kyle Calendar 500, the city of Est was heating up. Young Tackle leans into his mom and blurts out, "Will the sky stay black again today?" His mother confirms it, brushing off the tacky worries about whether he'll sleep and if it'll stay dark forever. Then she smiles and reassures him that everything's okay, telling him the Lord's blessings will surely lift them and the whole people with hope. And then a month later, the cloudy sky finally rips open into bright blue. Everyone erupts in cheers when that long-awaited sunlight finally breaks through, and the land starts fighting back green shoots pushing up from dried soil like it's not done yet. But the rain still won't come, and if this drags on, the crops will start dying. Panic crawls back into everyone's hearts, and Tackle's mother notices the shift before anyone else even realizes it's happening. She snaps into command, barking orders to fire up every water-lifting wheel, then shouts for the sluice gates to fly open, flood the fields with every drop they can push. He shouted for them to tweak the sluice gate just enough to pull even a little of that thinning river into the irrigation channels, and the workers snapped to it at once, jumping into action. As the mother stares at the operation unfolding, dread crashes in. This is exactly the terrible omen of a bad harvest her child warned about, and she knows the basin has more mouths to feed, but she refuses to let the river run dry. The mother keeps replaying it in her head, how every prep mattered, how losing the watermill or running out of emergency stockpiles would have turned that child's life into total disaster. While she worries, young Tackle calls Raymond over, orders the steward to report everything from every corner, every tiny shift, even details that look like they don't matter at all. Raymond snaps to attention, answers with "Lord Chris," and promises he's got it. Then Tack Hill snaps, telling everyone to stop stalling and do what needs to be done right now. The mother's orders hit the ground running across the territory, and the second water finally floods in. The farmers erupt in cheers. Then the mother and Raymond blast out proclamations everywhere through the executive branch. Baron Soli focused on cutting the tax weight and rerouting grain from the granaries, and it worked, keeping everyone's nerves steady, because right there in the regular conference room, he said every measure was going exactly as planned. Raymond steps up and confirms it right there. The farmers promise they'll only need to trim their living costs a little, and the Baron grits his teeth, saying they can't drop their guard, but he still has plenty of wiggle room in reserves and money. Meanwhile, Tackle catches the whole conversation and can't stop wondering, maybe they'll actually pull through this crisis. Standing in the hallway afterward, Tackle stared into the silence, wrestling with doubts like he couldn't even tell if his own judgment was right. He sensed things were finally turning in his favor from the scraps of info he'd collected, but honestly, he stayed on edge until someone could confirm it for him. With the confirmation finally in hand, Tackle's whole body floods with overwhelming relief, like he just survived his first huge disaster. Back in the present timeline, Baron Solis gets fresh reports on how everything's going, and the news is huge. Turnip farming is thriving in spots all across the land. Tackle's mother tells the Baron they can greet winter in peace, and everyone's already grateful. Then young Tackle can't hold back and blurts out how awesome his father is. Their territory didn't just win, they're handing out food aid to the neighbor that got rich off speculation. And that's the kind of power move that could finally snap the feud into peace. They've battled through both the fear of a bad harvest and the hunger of a famine, and somehow came out standing. Out of the 5 biggest disasters from the old timeline, only 2 are still standing. So after the meeting ends, Tackle slams back to his room and tears into his timeline documents. Mid-stride down the hallway, Tackle suddenly catches voices blasting from his father's office. His thoughts scream the exhaustion finally catching him after they dodged that ruined harvest, and the guy still can't unwind, so he lets out a dark joke. "Tonight, I either sleep like a king, or I drop from overwork and wake up reincarnated in some other world." Sure, he could have died from overwork, and that wouldn't be funny at all, because when Tackle finally clocks this strange behavior, it's exactly what the earlier scene was trying to show. From inside the office, he hears someone belly-aching about being dubbed the Turnip Baron, stuck enduring this torture begging, pleading, screaming for it to stop. Tack Hill slams the blame on himself. Nope, not his fault. Then adds a shaky little maybe at the end. In the year 500 of the Kyle calendar, somebody uncovers Tackle stuck in a weird, impossible pose in his room. He freezes and the shock hits him like a punch. And the maid blurts out, totally disappointed, that the other maids aren't cute at all, like, seriously, why even bother? Right then, another voice cuts in, asking what the big diplomatic mess is really about, and whether Takeru's just stressing over studying, or what the heck could possibly have him so worked up. Turns out Tackles tore into documents and maps tied to the whole turnip situation. Picture the last timeline famine hit. Grain prices went through the roof, and everything spiraled into conflict, wrecking their peace with neighboring lands. But this time, their territory feeds itself, so those fights never even get a chance. And on top of that, they hand out free grain and sell turnips at the ready, just to keep relations warm. Still, everything between the Vi County to the west and Gorman Vi County kept crumbling so hard it hurt. The steward, speaking for that arrogant Viscount's family, sent in an offer of turnips and got a flat-out, no furious. The Viscount blasted them for trying to use a natural disaster to stuff their own barns, rake in profit through speculation, and pull a stunt he swore no true nobleman would ever sink to. Next, a dark-haired figure snaps and asks if a nobleman should even be eating animal feed, and the narrator says Viscount Hyorami from the east is getting slammed just the same. The insults spiral out of control. The Viscounts fight back, claiming the upper class has no business with what the lower class does, and then they hit an uglier battleground. Water rights during the drought. Meanwhile, the document pins Kyle Year, 506 of the Solis family, and spells out how a proud, young light swordsman gets lured into an ally's trap, then gets left alone and isolated. Tackle keeps replaying the day he lost his family, because in just 5 years, that same terrifying moment will crash back into his life. His brother, Dalek, was a monster with a blade, saving soldiers and carving through enemies. But then the lights went out, and the darkness never let him return. Still, even if the power gap was real, it never explains why he had to die. But if only he hadn't been stabbed in the back by his own allies. In the farming villages across the border, hunger crushed people until they died, and the starving desperate poured into the cities, filling the streets with raw, bitter cries. Then winter finally slammed down for real in Kyle calendar year 501, and the food crisis for both families hit a brutal, total deadlock. People ripped themselves away from their farms and bolted for the Estel territory. Even with everything spiraling into disaster, Viscount Gorman didn't change a bit. Meanwhile, Tackle's parents and even Raymond were losing their heads. Tackle starts muttering that he'll crush the Gorman noble family, then clamps his mouth shut, realizing he just said it out loud. A month passes and things go from bad to way worse fast. Someone calls in and says the number of refugees is sky high. Tackle leans toward the window, staring as the crisis explodes into view, happening in real time right in front of him. Meanwhile, inside the Solis home, Tackle's mother lays out the city's security fears, and Baron Solis can't ignore it. Worryful voices are warning them that refugees are slipping into Esther. Suddenly, young Tackle rockets through the door, shouting for his mother and making the whole room ring with his urgent announcement. He burst out with a proposal and demanded his father be dragged in too. Baron Solis's interest spikes the moment the request lands, and he nods, ready to hear them out. Tackhill's mother practically blurts out, yes, all excited, promising they'll do it for sure. Later, Esther's streets suddenly choke with refugees in hooded cloaks and walking staffs, while some drift across the road in a daze and others collapse, exhausted, straight onto the ground. Neighboring territories have started letting refugees in too. And Tackle can't stop thinking about it, how history shifts and creates brand new moments that never happened in the old timeline. The tension with both Viscounts and this sudden flood of refugees is a brutal reminder. But right now, Tackle has no clue what's about to hit him next. Captain Weiss stands armored, gripping an ornate blade, and Tackle leans in to say it. He had zero idea the worst flag was hiding just around the corner, ready to strike. He introduces himself as Solus Vonticle, the second son of the Solus family ruling Esther, the Kyle Kingdom's southern frontier, and then drops the wild truth he's living his third life. Nishida Takahiro's first life was as a Japanese salaryman tidy, controlled until that perfect act landed him with a wife, Yuko, who kept getting dragged through endless trouble. Then he shoved himself harder and harder just to fix it, overworked himself to death, and left her standing there alone. Tackle the Soli's second life as the family's second son turned into a nightmare calamity after calamity, until his brother, his parents, and even his sister were all gone. And when an invading army finally caught him, he was crushed, executed. At least that's what everyone thought. Right when he was about to die, only the Lord's authority finally kicked in, the moment the space-time magic flared, and before he could even blink, he was back as a newborn Tequil, and his third life had just begun. He'd rewrite the past heartbreak with his own hands and claw out a future where his family stayed safe. Then, right out of nowhere, he yanked the space-time magic lever again, replaying his very first life as Nishita, so he could finally bring joy back to his beloved wife, Yuko. In the year 500, right, when Kyle's calendar says the time is up, Taki is already 8 years old, and the kids are throwing a celebration because he finally finished his daily assignments. And because his past lives as Nishita and Tackle sharpened him to the bone, he wipes out every task the moment morning hits this new world, only demands noble education until about age 15. But he already burned through that whole curriculum in his previous run, so his third timeline kicks off strong and fully prepared. And right after he asks if Tackle's headed out, someone nods and says, "Yeah, he is," while another voice jumps in like, "I'll go with you." Young Tackle is getting ready to bolt, and Anne, fresh in her crisp uniform, hangs nearby. Then she lunges in and offers to grab Lord Tackle's coat, but Tackle waves her off, saying it's totally fine. Then the household staff surges around the young lord as he gets ready to leave. Right then, Tackle's siblings scoop him up and swing him around like it's a game, and his brother yells, asking if he's heading out again. The narrator points at the eldest son, Solus von Dalek, just 11, and then someone yells for their brother, as Dalek casually drops, that the prodigy tore through his assignments in no time again today. Dalek calls him out, saying that's just what Tackle claims, but the truth is Tackle is so insanely good at everything that it makes Dalek look bad, and then he pushes Tackle to admit it, only for Tackle to blurt out an awkward, stumbling reply. Then the story flips back to the old timeline. Tackle idolized someone so hard he could never measure up, and each loss crushed his confidence again and again. While he spiraled, she was already a legend. At 13, she proved insane, sword talent. By 14, she fought her first battle, and by 16, her martial fame had spread so far that the lands around her started to fear her skill and her magnetic presence. Watching that female warrior go all in is pure, brutal fire. Suddenly, someone blurts, "What's wrong?" as Tackle just stares them down, and inside his head, the realization hits like a punch. This future is one he has to break, because if history keeps rolling, his brother is going to die in battle 5 years from now. The moment flips into pure chaos when someone accuses Tackle of hiding something again, and Tackle panics, blurting out that there's absolutely nothing to hide. Soon, they finally roll into the S-City Special Refugee Camp sector. He'll grab some seriously tasty street food from a stall on his way home. And he notices the chaos finally starts to ease up, and Tackle nods along, giving full credit to everyone's hard work. The narration kicks off with Estel's domain running on water wheels, and it keeps famine at bay by rolling out preserved foods and public granaries. Last year, right at the southern edge of the Kyle Kingdom, disaster hit hard volcanic hell. From neighboring Griffonia rained chaos down. Then a brutal drought slammed the land, and crop fields in Vi County, east and west, collapsed in ruin, and refugees with nowhere left to turn started flooding into the city of Est. Tackle warns that if the city swells with refugees, order will crumble fast, because he simply can't stomach leaving people behind, especially when they arrive starving and shivering from the cold. All across the city, the refugees were finally swept up into one safe spot, and now they're getting the help they need right now. Tackle, with his modern know-how, pushes for the fourth move, a full refugee relief plan, and under Stuart Raymond's lead, they set up a designated area with temporary housing and food distribution where the dried noodles steal the show and the warm soups hit like comfort magic. Tackle tells them to swing by the reception office again today for now, and Anna nods and agrees. At the refugee camp registration office, the staff are herding the newcomers into neat lines, yelling directions as they go. Signs everywhere scream that registration isn't optional. It's required for everyone. Clear. That bright, cheerful blonde clerk plops into her seat, eyes locked on the line of newcomers, and tells the next refugee, "All right, register time." Then she fires off what she needs: their name, gender, age, their old job, and the names of everyone traveling with them. She then fires back, asking where they came from, so the refugee points to a village east of Esther, and Claire immediately starts scribbling, recording every last detail with fierce focus. Then Claire shoots back and confirms the registration is finally done. She thrusts the registration tag into your hands and warns, "You'll need this when they assign you jobs, refugee camps, food distribution, so don't you dare lose it, under any circumstances." Then they jump in and tell Tackle, because the tags are tied to numbers, refugees can't hand them over in any trade. The refugee nods, grateful. He ties it all together and points you to the bulletin board jammed with job listings, then makes it crystal clear that even the camp's own setup hires refugees to work. Before moving on, the refugee shoots them one more heartfelt thanks. Then Claire snaps her attention to the next person in line, calling them forward after wrapping up with the last refugee. She tells them, "If anything comes up, you can swing by the consultation desk next door anytime." The refugee thanks her right back. But just moments later, someone yells, "Lord Tackle is stepping into the office." A staff member leans in and praises Claire's amazing work from today. Claire whirls around, and there's the young lord shouting her name at the top of his lungs. A towering, shadowy figure steps up to greet Lord Tackle too, while Claire stammers out her thanks, totally rattled by how close and intimidating he feels. Refugee women hired at the reception office crowd around Tackle, spilling heartfelt thanks because he didn't just rescue them, he put real wages in their hands too, and one woman can't even find the words for how grateful she is. Then someone blurts out, "Did you just say that, Tackle?" And the second he realizes he's been caught, his eyes go blank. He's so distracted he starts scanning the place, totally lost, and asks, "Wait, where is it?" Then the moment word spreads about a soulless family prodigy, everything spirals fast. Tackle starts freaking out inside because he knows this could be a seriously ugly turn. Suddenly, a staff member blows the whistle on Tackle and Anne, barking at them like they've done something outrageous. He snaps at him and reminds Tackle that he was warned not to do that here, then orders him to make it right by paying it back through his work. And Tackle shoots back with a quick, panicked apology. Anne jumps in too, apologizing fast, admitting everyone already knows about Tackle's situation, and that he's the one who cooked up the relief plan. Meanwhile, Tackle cringes at how far he took it, but Anne just laughs it off, painfully awkward and all. Later, while they stroll through the camp, someone spots them and asks, "How's it all going at the reception office?" The staff member answers that refugees are already catching on, fast learning their jobs at lightning speed. And, just like that, the number of people they can handle each day keeps climbing higher. Even the people they hired were pulled straight from the refugees themselves. Meanwhile, Claire pours her heart out, saying everyone here is genuinely thankful to the Lord and to Sir Tackle because the Soley family didn't just hand refugees warm, filling meals, they even helped them land jobs. And you can see it all in one bright moment, a happy mother holding her child. Claire keeps going, saying she grew up in an orphanage, then somehow got handed a job this huge. Tackle blurts out to her, and it hits her like a slap. She's been talking too long. Claire freezes, panics, and apologizes, swearing she'll jump right back to work. Then Anne towers on high, staring down at the registration area like it's about to go down, telling Claire she's still genuinely pumped to team up with her, just like always. Claire shoots back immediately, all fired up, confirming it with pure excitement. The reception office just kicked off everything at once because their workload is huge and nothing runs without careful processing, and those functions are vital for the calamity coming next. Then someone calls out, "We should help too," and the whole room jumps on board. Refugees keep pouring in, and the moment the line stretches out, someone shouts for everyone to fall in because they're on the move. The mission isn't just escape, though securing personnel is the whole goal. Those registration tags weren't made for this at all. Carl in the workshop cooked them up for a completely different mission. Tackle clocks just how unstoppable Claire is at her job, and boom, he pushes her forward as a future manager. The wooden registration tag gleams with meticulous craftsmanship, stamped proudly with the Soli family name. Tackle looks back and realizes that everything's shifted lately. The same chaperone who used to trail him is now one of the few people who truly gets him, right there with Raymond. Instead of snapping at him at times, she now meets his eyes with real respect, even with him 10 years younger. So, as Tack, he starts wishing she'd stop being so overly deferential, because part of him thinks the Ice Woman is no more. Tackle now has a dependable ally and a strong supporter in his corner until a few days later when everything looks fine with the refugee relief, and then disaster hits as a formal notice lands from the Gorman Viscount family, ordering every refugee from their Viscount territory to be shipped right back. Up to now, most refugees were pouring in from far-off places like the Viscount Gormans and Viscount Hyoremes domains, and the Solis family shared help with everyone, no matter where they came from. But this new directive has slammed the door on that old way. The people in Viscount Gorman's domain are getting nothing but soup kitchens and refugee camp help, no job referrals at all. And that's as far as the Solis family can stretch, no matter what happens next. At the camp, there's no way to double-check anything, so they weigh it all on people's word, and yeah, they know it. But once the rumors about what's happening spread to the refugees, almost none of them will ever admit they're still from Viscount Gorman's lands. A few days later, right outside the registration office, the staff blare the good news that there's enough food for everyone, then shove everyone into a line to finish their registration, while Tackle's quietly been feeding that rumor to the refugees himself, praying it'll keep the whole thing from falling apart. He shouts at the crowd, urging everyone outside the Esther domain not to hesitate. Jump into the line when you register. They'll only ask for your name and which town or village you came from. Someone nods yes, and the moment they step closer, another blurts, "Excuse me." Right then, a crew of mercenaries barrels into the registration area driven by a blonde leader, and there's even a young kid with them, plus a hooded figure standing right in the mix. One mercenary steps forward and says they were hired by Viscount Gorman, then immediately asks the big question, can they still get in on the food distribution? Tackle catches himself thinking, whoa, we're being way too honest about what's really going on. He straight up questions them to see if they're all mercenaries hired by Viscount Gorman, trying to figure out the best way to steer them. The hooded figure snaps that Viscount Gorman kicked them out, calling them a bunch of unwanted freeloaders, and the contract got ripped up after the latest incident. Then Tackle grins and says it won't be a problem at all. He tells them they must have had a brutal trip to get here, and if they check in at the reception desk, they can grab food immediately. He snaps his command line up and register, one after the other. The hooded figure in the shadows stares at Tackle and mutters, "You owe me one," like a debt just got stamped into place. A few hours later, after helping with the distribution, he barrels into the dish cleanup right as someone shows up to approach him. Realization hits she spots him as the same guy from before. The dark-haired man swears he overheard it at the reception that the one who'd take down the lord of this domain's son had Tackle himself come up with the relief plan. The man finally admits it, no doubt about it. He's already bracing to protest because everyone keeps scolding him for not acting like a real noble, and admits he doesn't look like he belongs here at all. The dark-haired man drops a sincere apology for how rude he acted earlier, admitting he'd been told the relief system was Tackle's idea, and he's still blown away by it. The dark-haired man steps forward and introduces himself as Weiss Schwarzfalk. Takiel grins, says it's a pleasure to finally meet him, and then introduces himself, Takiel, the second son of Baron Soli. Weiss steps up and on behalf of the 30 mercenaries in his crew, makes it clear he's here to thank them, because even though he's still young, they've already trusted him with the captain spot for the two-headed hawk. Tackle tells everyone they've got each other when things get rough, but deep down, the second he hears Weiss Schwarzfalk, something clicks instant recognition. Weiss grimaces and admits that, humiliatingly, in Gorman-Vi County, there was a public notice that banned helping outsiders, so he couldn't get a single meal in any town or village. He barely scraped his way here. Tackle frowns, thinking that Weiss the Black Hawk somehow rings a bell, and then he says, "I see." So Weiss is on the hunt for a brand new boss in the Griffonia Empire. Weiss admits he's on the hunt for a new employer, cutting through the Esther territory and pushing straight across the border toward the Griffonia Empire. Then Tackle's mind snaps, his eyes widen in pure shock. Suddenly, Tackle snaps to a crucial memory, and shock drains all the color from his face. That realization slams into him like a freight train, and suddenly, bam, his memories all come rushing back. That mercenary captain staring him down is Weiss the Black Hawk of the Graphonia Empire, the very man who'll rise to lead the northern expedition as the ever-victorious general. And 12 years later, he'll invade the kingdom of Kyle and seize the Esther domain. Weiss clocks Takiel's weird behavior and snaps, asking if he's overdoing it while the dark-haired guy brushes it off fast, thanking Weiss for the plate. Yet Takiel can't shake it, because this is the same man who wiped him out in the previous timeline. Tackle tries to steady himself, blurting out that he wants to thank everyone again, but inside his head, panic storms the room as he replays that execution scene, because he got so thrown off by some guy's beard that he barely registered who was even standing there. When he finally tried to deliver the surrender message, his mind was already slipping away, and the image of that bearded man is now bleeding out and getting harder to hold. Then Weiss leans in and tells Tackle, "If there's ever anything we can do to repay you, don't you dare hold back, ask us." Tackle's panic finally snaps. He's begging Weiss with all his might not to head for the Graphonia Empire, swearing that he'll spill everything the second she listens. But Tackle snaps, this is an emergency. They've got to get a plan going right now. Weiss stares up at him, clearly thrown off by the young lord's sudden, blazing intensity. Later, Raymond rushes in to apologize for stealing Tackle's time on such short notice, but Tackle waves it off. He says it's totally no big deal. As the two of them stride down the hallway, Tackle blurts that he wants to pitch an idea to his parents right now, but his mind won't line up the words. He yells at Raymond, begging for his help, and Raymond shoots back a quick, "Sure." Zero hesitation. Tackle's so grateful he can't stop thanking him. Raymond just snapped into the decision at an unreal speed, and I couldn't stop thinking about how crazy fast that was. In a room just down the hall, someone yells at Tackle that his drink is finally ready. Raymond makes a quick excuse, slips into tea-making mode, and as he sets the cup down, he calmly tells to cool. Remember, haste makes waste. Raymond snaps at Tackle to calm down. Just as the young lord raises his cup and takes a sip of tea, Tackle slumps into the chair, clenching his fists as he tries to steady his mind. Raymond lingers close by, staring him down and asking, "So, what's going on?" "Just tell me, explain the whole overview first." Tackle fires back, saying there are two things he's dying to pitch. Tackle lays it out. This first one is all about the refugees' future. Keeping this many people supported in their current state is going to get brutal, so the refugees run straight to the Soulless family. He figures they can bring them in as new subjects and flip the whole disaster into a chance to supercharge the domain's productivity. Raymond leans in and asks what Tackle really thinks about it, then adds right from where he's standing that the administration basically sees it the same way. Then he leans in and demands to know exactly how Tackle plans to take them down. Tackle points them toward Mount Tegan, recruit volunteers, push forward, and turn that place into their brand new frontier, where tents are already scattered across the land like a promise. Tackle tells them that someday he wants to turn it into a base for pushing into the demon frontier. Yeah, it's terrifying, but it could also be a gold mine of incredible treasure. He shoves a map into Raymond's hands, circles the line where Vi County of Hyarimi ends and Estelle's domain begins, and points at the demon frontier like it's a warning sign because if they want a hideout, no one from either territory would spot. Tegan is perfect. Out on the frontier, it never stops bandits lurk, monsters prowl, but Tegan's defenses are solid, so you can finally breathe easy. Raymond weighs it all in his head and decides, if that's how it goes, then we should hear the second proposal first. Raymond leans in and asks Tackle if he knows Vice Captain Weiss's mercenary crew, the twin-headed Hawks, are staying in Est for now, and Tackle snaps back that he's already heard it. Then Tackle spills that he's crossed paths with them more than once, said their captain is unbelievably sharp, and every single one of their members is an elite soldier. The Soulless family is on border duty for a reason, so every day they have to build up their forces, strengthen their numbers, and stay ready for anything. Tackle knows that when a big shot invites a mercenary crew like that, they almost never say yes. But now that they're staying right in their territory, this is the golden chance they can't afford to let slip. Raymond looks at this and thinks, that's downright cruel. Meanwhile, Tackle says they're lucky their grain investment paid off, so the money's secure. And now, the first frontier development proposal. It can only move forward with escorts to make sure everyone stays safe. Tackle argues that if they want to bulk up their forces, they'd better jump on this chance, post them as guards for the new settlement, and strike 2 targets at once. He drains his tea, sets the cup down, and declares bold as brass that this is his proposal. Then Tackle leans in and grills Raymond on what he really thinks. Raymond points at the numbers and says hiring 30 people is going to burn a huge hole in your wallet. Tackle locks up when he realizes Raymond saw straight through him. Then Raymond fires back, asking if that's all Tackle's got. Then Raymond clocks it. Ann already briefed him on Tackle's game plan, and Tackle smirks, saying he's already got a few ideas to cover the cost. He suggests letting the mercenary crew grab steady jobs from other clients too, not just the Baron's house, so they can juggle their budget and fund themselves with fresh income. Tackle keeps pushing this idea hard. He wants Vice Captain Weiss as his personal instructor so he can learn swordsmanship and tactics up close. And he insists Weiss is the real deal, trusted, deadly with a blade, sharp with military strategy, and even well-liked by the men. Raymond weighs it for a second, then shrugs it off. He says the core stuff should be good enough for now. He says the administration's policy leaves the door open to talk it over with Lord Dalek and Lord Chris, and Tackle's face tightens with worry. Raymond drops a hard truth-finding Weiss. A teacher might be way too soon. He says the whole process will start with one brutal question: can Weiss be trusted? And then, like clockwork, the parents will shut it down with "not yet," while you can practically hear everyone groan in pure, frustrated anger at that rule. Then Raymond leans in and demands what Tackle thinks the future holds for the settlement at Mount Tegan. Tackle lays out his vision with sharp clarity, then leans in and reminds Raymond he's the second son built to back the family head, his elder brother. That settlement he's set on building will pump the economy, and it'll become the fortress base to defend the southern region of Esther. He's ready to reshape and rule Tagoon himself, because for the future, this place is a must, no debate, no delays. Raymond leans in, tells Tackle, "I've got this, go handle the rest." And the very next day, in the regular meeting room, Tackle's father leans across from him, smirking like he already knows. The ending says Raymond filled him in on everything, then laughs and notes that Tackle just can't stop cooking up fresh trouble. The father leans in and asks if Tackle's still good with his proposal, warning that if this frontier plan gets even bigger, the barony won't be able to cough up 10% of the promised profits. He adds that the barony is lucky enough to have some wiggle room financially, then fires back. Does Tackle really get that this investment is going to dwarf everything they've done before? The father warns him that poking the Viscounts again could spell disaster. But before anyone could pile on, Tackle's mother snapped in, saying they'd never have been saved at all without his ideas, that their domain would have faced the same ruin as the neighboring counties, and that every single gain they'd built came straight from his plans. She snaps at her husband that the Viscounts are his problem to handle through proper rule, and that Tackle stays out of it completely. The father tries to speak, but his words just fizzle out because the truth hits hard. Mom is the strongest in this whole family. All that chaos, with both Viscounts, plus the pressure of running the refugees and grabbing supplies from the frontier. That's exactly what had been rattling in his head already. Then boom, he finally lays down his decision. The swordsmanship instructor request gets slammed down for now, and the whole who rules this new frontier question gets paused until Tackle turns 15. He tells Tackle to hand the details over to Raymond, so the two of them can figure everything out side by side, and Tackle nods, fully getting it. Even though he's crushed inside that the instructor still won't get approved, his father drops one more bombshell. After Tackle's last big proposals pay off, his reward is 50 gold coins, and his father shuts it down like a wake-up call, reminding him that's the kind of money most common folk would earn over years, so he better spend it smart. Tackle just gapes at the gold coins whirling in front of him, 50 of them, flashing like a jackpot that won't stop. Even for a noble family, this is pure scandal. An 8-year-old baron's son just gets to burn this kind of money, free and easy, and his thoughts race as he tries to guess where it'll explode next. His mother stares at it in silence, and it's clear they're stuck with this for now. Then someone chimes in saying, sure, the swordsmanship instructor mess is awful, but since Raymond is handling it, keeping that mercenary band around shouldn't be a problem. Then Tackle bursts out of the room, cutting the conversation short with a quick excuse. Dalek shouts, and Claire hesitates. Chris snaps around, shocked, calling for his brother while the tackle grind halts dead as everyone turns to look back. He shoots an apology for barging in out of nowhere. No warning, no planning. Just that sudden interruption. Clegg steps forward, snaps that this is her business too, and demands the chance to speak right then. The father feels trouble brewing and tells Tackle to spell out what's going on, and then admits he can't shake the horrible feeling something's about to go wrong. Down the hallway, Tackle stands there, and Chris and Dalek loom right behind him, and he lays it out loud and crystal clear. He's determined to formally become a student under a swordsmanship master. Then he snaps into expression shift mode, and suddenly everything hits him like a punch. Pure shock at what comes next. Tackle's voice surges with pure passion as he tells Commander Weiss that he and his brother want to study under his command, and then he drops to one knee, begging for permission. Chris just stares, wide-eyed and completely stunned, as reinforcements flood in to back his cause, and Dalek slams to a halt, stunned just as hard by the wild twist nobody saw coming. Then, from the shadows, their father steps in and calls them out because they're not asking for anything else. They want to train under the mercenary band's leader, just the two of them. Chris stands his ground, pure determination blazing across his face. Dalek's eye shows nothing but iron resolve, like it's already decided what happens next. Even in the smaller panel, just when Dalek suddenly snaps into action, his younger sibling blurts, "What's gotten into you?" while Clegia watches, worry tightening with every second. Then the father snaps at them to keep going, staring straight at Dalek and demanding he spill the explanation. But Chris takes over and plunges into swordsmanship, breaking it down like it's an open book, because sword fighting is usually split into 9 ranks, and most people only have a hazy clue where they fit. He even draws a pyramid with Sword God towering at the very top, then Sword Saint, Sword Demon, Sword Master, Sword Expert, Veteran, Swordsman, Training, and at the very bottom, the Unaware. He keeps on talking, slams in another diagram, and lays out the truth of what's happening. In the Esther domain, nobody can top a certain skill tier. Sure, the Soulless Barony is stacked with squad leader veterans, but when it comes to swordmasters, only 2 in the whole domain reach commander class, and that still leaves out their father. Chris keeps hammering his point with cold, hard facts. Sure, the army of Baron Solus is famous for bravery, but most of them can barely swing a sword. Then Chris shoots his father a look. "Am I right?" And his father answers, "Yes." So Chris keeps grinding on his research. Then boom! The other 2 swordmasters in the domain get knighted and start running towns, which basically makes studying under them a nightmare. Clegia's eyes blow wide with shock at how deep her brother goes, and she blurts out, "Did you dig all of that up by yourself, Chris?" Chris keeps hammering his presentation on Dalek, and brace yourself. Dalek's brothers are just 11, yet they're way more mature than kids twice their age. And for a kid who's only just started serious sword training, he's already matching grown adults, because he's climbed all the way to the 3rd lowest rank of swordsman. Chris tells him Dalek's growth doesn't stop there. His bloodline magic has only just kicked in, and now even rare light magic is showing up right inside the kingdom. He tells you that in the previous timeline, by the time Dalek hit 16, he'd already climbed up to Sword Saint, one of only a few in the entire kingdom, and even in this timeline, Dalek is already flashing those same terrifying signs of potential. But then Tackle catches something terrifying while he listens Dalek's growing a full 3 years ahead of where he was in the last timeline, and Chris just nods, admitting his dad's worries are spot on. If Chris isn't thrilled with his current training, his father steps in with a bold suggestion to turn things around. He can pull some strings and get someone to step in and help out. Tackle tells him that Raymond will be set up with a training partner. Then the father cuts in and says, "If you're hunting a master, I know the perfect person who'll do the job." But Tackle's inner voice snaps in with cold clarity because that plan is way too naive. Suddenly, Chris drops a bombshell that flips everything. Sir Weiss's swordsmanship is straight up on a sword demon level, and all 3 siblings freeze in total disbelief. While Chris hammers the truth home, Weiss is 1 whole rank above their father. After the bombshell drops, the room goes eerily quiet, and Tackle's mind starts racing as he tries to digest what his brother just told him. Then he finally nods at the exact point Chris hammered home. telling them he'll spill the results of the review later, so they've got to hold tight. Chris and Clegg's faces light up like fireworks. Weiss's father tears the proposal meeting apart and orders an investigation straight into Weiss and his mercenary crew. Once they finally had solid intel, they green-lit Chris and Tackle to train in swordsmanship with Weiss, if he was willing to say yes. Tackle reels from what just happened, stunned that his brother's surprise support saved him this time. Yet as the relief hits, one terrifying question slams into his head. What on earth was fueling Dalek's sudden, rapid growth at the very end? Turns out, Dalek only told Tackle later after he'd finally found his spine and confidence again, because he'd been clawing to keep his spot ever since, terrified that his little brother's pure talent would knock him out. Suddenly, Dalek snaps to it, realization hits hard, and he finally understands why everything felt so strange back then. Then Chris darts to his brother, begging for forgiveness, saying he screwed up again only for Dalek to wave it off and tell him it's okay. On the edge of S-City, at the temporary mercenary training grounds, Weiss ends the day's session with a final wrap-up. Dalek fires back a thankful nod for the instruction, and the message tags him as Solus von Dalek, an 11-year-old kid. Almost 3 months have gone by since the brothers kicked off training under Weiss. As the session wraps up, Klesia fires off a warm, heartfelt thank you to Weiss, but Chris looks totally drained, like he can't catch a breath, so when someone points out that he's being too slack, he can't help but wonder where his brother is even getting all that crazy energy from. The narrator snaps the name on him, Solus Vontigel, only 8 years old. Then Chris leans in and asks Dalek if he's already climbed up to master rank. Dalek answers that Weiss's training is brutally strict, like a demon running the lessons, but Chris can see it working. Dalek tells him he's fully locked in, and now he's starting to blossom with real talent. He lays out his grind 3 sword sessions a week at the makeshift drill grounds, then 2 more rounds every week in the courtyard of Baron Solus's manor. Their father stared wide-eyed at how huge Dalek had gotten at this point. Even the regular soldiers didn't stand a chance against him. And the wild part is this. Dalek already tore past the swordsman rank and climbed all the way to warrior, which is straight up remarkable. Chris grins and tells his brother it's all because he landed the best teacher out there. Meanwhile, Tackle stares at his own situation and realizes the kid hasn't even graduated from being just a trainee. At level 2, he should have been proud of his sword skills until you compare him to other 8-year-olds and realize he's hopeless, sitting there crushed and defeated, believing he should train under the very same legendary teacher who shaped his brother. He stands among the flowers with his head bowed, looking crushed and broken. The sword training is hitting every mark, and the Pioneer Group's formation is falling into place just like the plan promised. Tackle lays out the game plan from the start. No matter how tiny the settlement begins, they're pushing it to grow into a real, working town first. They'll raise homes and shops to serve as a rear base for the hunters who keep slipping in and out of demon territory, while investigators, refugees included, put to work for the mission, get sent racing to the Taigun frontier. Tackle lets out a huge breath of relief, because hooking up with Raymond first was the smartest move. Everything's been running this smoothly only because Raymond has been steering the whole operation from the start. Mercenary bands are rolling into the settlement right now, teaming up with the Vanguard to gear up and build the town from the ground up. Then in just 6 months, the construction corps moves in, and the next year they're going all in on full-scale colonization. Weiss has been handed the reins in the frontier settlement, mostly running things through his lieutenant while he shuttles back and forth between Est and the frontier. He's also hammering the brothers into shape. After all that, both sides seem to agree they'll renew the deal every year, as long as both parties sign off. First round is a 2-year contract between Baron Soli's family and the Mercenary Corps. Then it can be extended 1 year at a time after that. Meanwhile, someone yells for Tackle, and he snaps back with a quick response. The voice tells him he's fully rested and urges them to spar a bit. And Tackhill answers with a quick, confident yes. Then, during a training break, someone leans in and tells Tackle, "At this pace, you're going to be stuck here forever." And Tackle just smirks back, "Yeah, I'll get brushed off one way or another." But Weiss snaps into action, tells him to take a little more break, and insists he's got this. Tacky's perfect trap snapped shut with 0 slip-ups, and you already know he's about to throw his shoulders back and breathe a huge sigh of relief. Now he can finally lock in on countermeasures for the last 5 great calamities left from the first term. Meanwhile, Anne bursts into Tackle's space and announces that a brand new package just landed from the workshop. Tackle tells her to haul it up to his room, and Anne nods like, "Got it." The package finally lands Carl's workshop masterpiece, the one everyone in S has been craving for ages. Takei is convinced he's finally got the green light to unleash the fifth arrow. Tackle leans in and tells you the truth to smash what's coming next. He's been building his edge since he was just 5 years old. At the border battle next year, right when the protagonist turns 9, Baron Solus's forces get crushed so hard, they take huge losses and lose most of their strength, sealing the 4th hit out of the 5 great disasters from the old era. The panel flashes a finished bow in one hand and a loaded quiver of arrows ready to unleash. But this isn't some run-of-the-mill bow. Tackle forged one that hits 3 brutal requirements: long range to strike beyond the Empire cavalry's reach, enough power to punch through their iron armor, and it's simple enough that every soldier can use it without needing advanced skill. He kicked things off by upgrading the bow materials in this world, teaming up with Carl, the workshop master first. He forged a composite bow by stacking different woods together, then supercharged it grinding on metal and monster-grade materials until it finally became a refined synthetic weapon built to hit harder and farther. Someone blurts out that Gerudo-san is awesome like always, but the craftsman snaps back to Tackle that this isn't a job for regular folks because the bow to draw demanded insane strength, so it's useless for most soldiers. That's exactly where Tackle's bargain bin knowledge from the modern world swoops in and saves the day. He draws inspiration from a 20th century American invention, a compound bow, and then he straps 4 pulleys together to slice the strain while blasting that starting velocity higher than ever. So he basically builds a crossbow that steals the best traits of both a composite and a compound bow and slap it on that base, and suddenly it's way easier to aim, while the accuracy goes through the roof. 3 years have blasted by since Tackle first started showing up at that workshop, and man, what a grind that road's been. Once the workshop got buried in water wheel orders, he hauled prototype models home and started digging into research. Then, while Nishida's footage replayed in his head, Tackle worked alone, obsessively snapping and retesting every string position and attachment, mixing pulley sizes and combinations again and again until they finally made sense. The image flashes his family together, and Tackle's thoughts burn with one promise: he'll protect them and their land, no matter what. With Carl fine-tuning the last spots for the materials and parts, Tackle threw every gold coin his father handed him the other day straight into finishing the project. And if those feelings hadn't been pushing him every step of the way, he would have quit way back. Then the prototype finally burst out of the workshop, finished and ready to go. The completed crossbow gets unveiled in full, every gear and bolt shown off as it's mounted into place, and Tackle just stands there clutching the finished weapon, finally ready to unleash the test he's been building for years. Now, Tackle forced them to build 2 different crossbow styles. One top-tier model packed a heavy composite bow and got slick pulleys. They cut costs hard by building the cheaper model with a composite bow and ditching pulleys entirely. After digging into the lore, I found out crossbows exist here too. But unlike regular bows, they either fired faster or just didn't match their intended purpose, so most people barely ever picked them up as real weapons. History has already put crossbows through the ultimate test, showing exactly where they shine and where they fall apart. During the European 100 Years' War, the longbow steamrolled the crossbow, while across the sea in Japan, traditional bows and firearms ruled so hard that crossbows never caught on and faded out of history for good. In the Kingdom of Kyle, bows aren't rare, they're deadly, but only if you've got serious skill and you train non-stop. And with Baron Solus's army full of part-time soldiers who can't stop bouncing between drills and the battlefield, archery's mostly out of the question. With a crossbow, you don't have to fight the pull. You just lock it steady, draw back the string, then squeeze the trigger. Done. All through development, Tackle kept every detail sealed tight, thanks to Raymond. Raymond told him, "Leave it to me," and promised everything would stay locked down. At last, every last detail for the 5th arrow is locked in and ready to fire. 2 days later, at the Mercenary Corps temporary training ground, someone marches up and greets Tackle with a loud, upbeat "Good morning." Weiss straight up welcomes the young master as Tackle rolls in with a load of luggage. One of the crew members asks what happened to the luggage, and right as it lands, Anne fires back that if it were luggage, she'd have grabbed it and carried it for him. Weiss asks Tackle for his take on something, and Tackle grins, says he's got something way bigger he wants them to check out today. Weiss crouches over the crossbow, studying it like it might bite, while someone leans in and starts grilling him about it. Weiss spots the strange-looking crossbow, and Tackle flashes a grin. Yeah, he built it by mixing ideas from different books, then paid a craftsman to level it up, and now Weiss squints at the weapon like, really? Tackle clocks that look and realizes, yep, Weiss must know the pros and cons of crossbows too, because in the whole kingdom of Kyle, basically nobody knows them. But Weiss. Of course she does, like the vice captain she is. Tackle asks if Weiss can fire it for him, because he needs to hear Weiss's thoughts on the weapon before he makes any move. Weiss snatches the crossbow and gets it ready to fire for the first test. Across the training ground, a distant target waits and he steps into position, sights locked, weapon primed. Then Weiss yanks the crossbow and fires. Boom! The bolt rips through the air with brutal force, screaming straight for the target. Tackle and the others lock in tight, eyes glued on the action as they track every shot. Suddenly, the bolt whacks into the target with a brutal impact, and the observers instantly look rocked, like they can't believe what they just saw. Weiss pauses for a heartbeat, then snaps the crossbow back into place with practiced precision, quick, deliberate, and sharp, as he tests every inch of its mechanics. He tilts his head up with pure excitement. If the Tackles pull another one of these, Weiss wants it too, because the mercenary corps is absolutely going to want these weapons outfitted in their ranks. Tackle blurts an apology saying, yeah, this is all I've got so far. He insists he needed Weiss's honest impressions first, before he even dares bring a proposal to his father. Weiss just straight up admits the weapon's power, and it leaves him shaking with shock. He tells Tackle to go tell his father he wants to buy one for himself. Even that armor from the Iron Cavalry, the pride of the Griffonia Empire, can be shattered. Then out of nowhere, someone yells for Tackle from the background. Clasia rages that it's not fair and demands her shot too, while Chris drops to his knees, begging for a turn. Reluctantly, the someone finally agrees, and the sibling bolts into it with pure excitement, then grabs the crossbow and Dalek just keeps firing, over and over, never once getting bored as he practices his shots again and again. Dalek keeps firing, barking that he just needs a little more practice, and someone finally waves him through, but the whole shooting spree won't quit until Anne snaps out a word that stops it dead. The next day crashes in, and in the soulless, barren household courtyard, Tackle rallies his dad, Mom, and Raymond into one spot, then leans in and thanks them for giving him their time. Then Tackle straightens up and addresses the Dalek formally, gripping the crossbow tight as he gears up to put on a demonstration. Meanwhile, Episode 8 kicks off in Baron Soli's manor courtyard. Tackle braces himself with a crossbow, ready to strike. He talks to his brother Dalek, then gets ready to show them what the weapon can actually do. Tackle lunges forward and fires the crossbow straight at the flames, and the bolt rips forward with insane force, smashing straight into the target. A blast erupts with an explosive thud that jolts every last one of them, Dalek included, into total disbelief at how insanely powerful this weapon is. Tackle lands one perfect dead center hit, and the rest just freeze in place, completely stunned by what they've witnessed. Meanwhile, Dalek locks eyes on that weird weapon, his mind racing to decode its wild shape and massive power, and he can't shake the thought that this knowledge might have been lurking in Tackle's books too. Tackle laughs and admits the pieces were ripped from books. Then he tried stitching them into a real bow, just to see if it'd work, after firing a test shot yesterday and grilling Weiss, the vice captain, for his take. The mercenary doubles down. This thing can bring down the Iron Cavalry of the Griffonia Empire. Then, out of nowhere, someone yells for Takula, and the dark-haired figure snaps at him, saying he should have told his father about it first. Takula's face falls as he admits he just got scolded. Raymond tells him, yeah, I get it. Then Tackle fires up the plan, saying that with this crossbow, even the timid rookies from their domain will still be able to shoot and fight with real skill. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the air. Someone calls out, Lord Tetcher! Baron Solis leans in and fires off the question, what do you think about that crossbow? Then he snaps out the truth compared to bows. Crossbows fire way slower, and that one flaw is why nobody values them much. With the clock ticking, they've got to plan for a war that'll hit in just 1 year. So Tackle and another key figure step up with a bold proposal. And at the strategy meeting, Weiss, Tackle, and Clasia line up and prepare to strike. Tackle pushes for full-scale mass production of his brand-new crossbow and orders it rolled out across the army right now, because the biggest threat they face is the Empire's Iron Cavalry. Right now, they've got zero way to stop the charges, and their territory gets swallowed as their group gets completely overrun. Tackle tells them the archer's arrows can't punch through the cavalry's armor, but then he points out this new weapon, the one that can actually chew through even iron, and he fires it himself. Right now, they've only got just under 400 soldiers, but if they can arm every single one with that crossbow, the whole war could flip on its head. And for now, they'll guard its mechanism like a prized weapon, keeping the upper hand so Weiss can't help but start thinking about it. Tackle nods and then hits them with the real promise they won't just churn out the new weapon, they'll widen who's capable of using it too. Then he turns to Weiss and asks, "So what happens if even 1/10 of our subjects can wield it?" Here's the real worth of the sixth arrow. Tackle swears this isn't some wild hype or rose-colored math. They're about to recruit nearly 800 brand new archers. First things first, they're gearing up to build a shooting range and arm everyone with standard crossbows. The townspeople get to blast targets for fun, and Tackle handles the prizes and all the setup, plus the range is open for soldier training and stays wide open for the people whenever they want. Meanwhile, someone leans in and asks Weiss and Klaya if they don't think Takir's proposal is absolutely fascinating, because the villagers are basically gearing up their skills just to chase those rewards. Then Tackle leans in, grins, and says that while they're just fooling around, their skills will sharpen on their own. Then bam, they'll end up snagging some killer archers without lifting a finger. But Weiss can't shake the thought, will these villagers actually fall in line, or will they fight back? Klasia just grins at the proposal, like she's already got something up her sleeve. Klasia blurts out that she tried it for the first time yesterday too, and she had a blast. And once they finally hear Tackle's next proposal, she's sure every last worry will vanish. She nods right along, and Tackle slams his plan forward by presenting the sixth arrow. He's bragging over a presentation board with his plan for stage 1. Then they'll score the targets and hand out prizes to the top performers, because that prize system is built to light a fire under everyone. Then, Tackle keeps laying out the tournament plan. First, the second stage rolls out monthly regular battles, plus a massive annual championship, so fighters can prove their skill. Then comes the third stage, where they back it all with prize money for the top winners of every event, to keep people showing up hungry to win. Right then, the stand-in steps forward and blurts that she can't afford to lose as Lord Tackle's guard, while Dayluck declares he's going straight for the annual championship. For the fourth stage, they're running a yearly tournament betting game on who'll win the champion, get it right, and you cash out, while they play the house and skim a little commission from every wager to pay for prizes and rewards. Meanwhile, the stand-ins are placing bets on Kreese, and Darren's grumbling because his pick missed. Tackle leans in and grills his father for his take because he wants the tournaments to explode with energy, and he knows that once people feel the buzz, more folks will pile into both competitions and bets, so they build the whole system from the ground up and turn it into a town-wide festival where everyone can join in. Tackle tells them, give it time, this tournament will become the Solis family's signature, because they can turn everyday citizens into a real fighting force by selling the entertainment and cashing in on every win. Baron Solis straight up says this is a brilliant move. Raymond watches the meeting unfold and realizes the merchant baron's blood is boiling. Once this becomes a specialty, every other domain will smell it too, and then they'll slap on the minimum entry fee. Meanwhile, Tackle fires back with a note to answer Raymond's question. He keeps insisting the crossbow's slower rate of fire isn't a deal breaker. It all comes down to what you're actually using and how you're using it. Tackle then points out the 3-stage gun volley Oda Nobunaga unleashed at Nagashino. Sure, the volleys shrink one step at a time, but the arrow count is still way bigger than what those ordinary archers have been firing this whole time. Like when they swap every 2 shots, it hits twice as fast, and with 3 shifts, the firing speed triples, while the soldiers keep rotating shoot, fall back, and get replaced. If it's like this, they can actually slam back the Iron Cavalry's charge, and you see someone snap to that realization in real time. He keeps bragging that his sword skills are top tier, but when it comes to a bow, he's totally hopeless until someone steps in and says, "You don't need talent. Give any ordinary man just 1 day of practice and he'll fire with enough power to pierce a target from that distance." Someone asks, Wouldn't it be insane if every soldier in the Baron's army could shoot like that? Then Tack Hill blurts out that he never told Ice a single thing about it. Of course, Raymond nods along, fully getting it. The two of them lock eyes like, yeah, we can't let this out yet. And they swear to keep it hidden from Clygia for now. Meanwhile, Baron Solus brags that he dragged Raymond here, and Raymond shoots back. Right on the dot, he's with it. She winces at the thought of those expenses. Then boom, a message pops up, telling them to act like they never even heard it. Baron Solus barks out Raymond's name, and Raymond shoots back. What is it? Tackle fires up the workshop, shouting that this crossbow is brand new and demanding mass production. Start now. He makes everyone swear secrecy is locked down tight, then pushes for it to be handed out to every soldier, with hands-on training on how to use it. Baron Solus nods along, and then adds his own command. Keep the construction running at the shooting range, and crank up the whole kingdom's fighting power with crossbows even without pulleys. In the split panels below, Baron Solus leans in and warns Clya to guard every last detail, because he'll have nothing leak out. As for figuring out how each weapon gets used on the battlefield, he's handing all that research over to Dalek. Takiel leans in and says he'll also hand Clysia the Reigns recruiting staff for the reception office and managing the tournament too. Then he snaps his fingers at the next person, lock down every detail for how the shooting range will run and how the voting system works, and bring it back for submission. They shoot back. Yes, right on the spot. Baron Solus snaps that these expenses will be paid for by the government budget, and then he shuts it down with, "That's all." In a chibi illustration, the two siblings cheer in sync, grinning so hard as they announce, "We did it." Tachiel pushes forward and pitches a quick idea. Weiss wants a new model crossbow, and Baron Solus's eyes light up with interest, so Tachiel lays it all out. For example, they'd shave some of the contract fee if they delivered crossbows to the mercenaries, and with tight rules, full secrecy, and strict oversight, they'd put those weapons through real monster fights, then demand reports on every tweak and improvement. He keeps going. Raymond nods along as they spell out the deal. If they sign on, they'll roll out the early mass-produced models to the mercenary corps first, then later pack the ones who already know how to use them into instructor roles for the army, and it's clearly a brilliant plan. One sibling fires off a teasing jab, bragging that they'll make even the master use them to the fullest, saying they've become downright cunning, while the other shoots back that they've been pitch black from the very beginning. Then Tackle leans into his father and asks if they should fire up a test, and Baron Solus nods right. Then Clea can't help but wonder, wait, can I do it too? Kleiser says, if we move right now, we'll make it in time for next year's war. And then he adds the brutal truth until today. They've been getting wiped out, over and over, by brutal mass cavalry charges. She says this is how they crank up the number of soldiers they can unleash on the battlefield, and once they forge their commoners into a real fighting force, they can hand the home front over without a single worry. As expected, someone hypes up Baron Solus. Then a text box hits you with the real issue giving regular people real military power has always been a nightmare. Push them to fight without a solid garrison behind, and their defenses collapse hard. While they're gone, bandits prowl the frontiers, and monsters can strike at any second. Nothing about it is safe. At the test firing range, a voice shouts, "Bullseye!" and yells to Raymond, "You nailed it too." Then someone else calls, "Your turn next." Over the noise, a teammate says, "Raise the angle just a hair." And another voice instantly agrees. And then, like everyone's catching their breath, someone remarks, "This is seriously something." Tackhill clocks it the moment it happens. If anyone tries to argue later, he'll just point to this and shut it down. Then he smirks and says the entertainment side is gonna be okay. The narrator tells you that, not long from now, when the Solis unleash their archers, this will be the first move that makes their legend roar across the battlefield. They cut right to it starting now. They're calling it the Esther Bow, and they're about to unleash this brand new weapon on their world. Later at the Easttown workshop, when the craftsmen are hammering away, someone yells that the part's crooked, and another voice cuts in, promising they'll dump the extra materials right back on them. Then a mysterious figure shows up at the workshop entrance and greets them like it's part of some bigger plan. Tackle Anne and their extra companion roll up to Geld's workshop in Est, and boom! Tackle realizes the place has exploded in size, with way more workers inside. Geld greets them with a big smile, shouting for the young master, and he was thanking them for trekking all this way then. Inside the workshop, the workers clocked them the moment they pulled up, and someone blurted out, "The young master is here!" As they climb the stairs, Tackle tells Geld to stop worrying since they're the ones barging in unannounced, but Geld just waves it off. Tackle tells him they're here to check how the Ester Bow project's progressing right now, and to team up on a brand new development. Geld's eyes suddenly blaze with non-stop, burning interest. Tackle tries to tell Geld to put his work first, but Geld barrels in mid-sentence, all fired up, bragging about both the water wheel project and every single thing they're building right now. It's all because of the young master's wild ideas. He even gives full credit to Tackle for handing them this whole opportunity. Work. And someone even drops Gerudo's name into the conversation. Geld thanks them, and Tackle and Anne trade those sweet, satisfied smiles like they just won everything. They rush into the workshop's private room and start pinning up a new clue fast. He used to say it was only one cramped room, but now he can finally talk things through in peace, and he's genuinely thankful for the upgrade. Then Geld leans in and asks Tackle what kind of product they're building. Carl slides in with them, and Tackle starts breaking it all down. Tackle drops blueprints for a brand new weapon, and Geld leans in, staring at the plans like he can't wait to uncover what they're hiding. Tackle breaks it down. This crossbow can rip off rapid-fire shots, but he makes it clear there's no panic on this project. He tells Geld to knock out the regular crossbow and the Estel bow first, and Geld nods, already on it. Then Tackle breaks down how it works. Arrows get stuffed into a magazine, and when you yank the lever, the whole mechanism slams back and forth to load them one after another. As the string gets yanked, the moment the lever hits the full pull, it snaps and fires on its own. Turns out this design is for the Juge crossbow, and legend says the genius tactician Juge Kongaming invented it, but historians are still split on whether it truly existed or was added later. The weapon first showed up in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and in his old life, Nishida would get fired up watching movies and making videos about it. Tackle says it's close, but it's not quite a machine gun. It's a weapon that sprays shots way faster than a normal bow, and honestly, there's nothing wrong with learning how it works. His excitement skyrockets at the thought of finally getting his hands on one in this world. Then he starts talking about that metal fitting that grabs the string, while Geld leans in, grilling him for the shape details. Back at the workshop table, Geld snaps at Tackle, "If you let that shaft wobble when it fires, you'd be asking for disaster." Tackle grins and pitches a better idea. Make the part double-layered and curved instead. Geld doesn't miss a beat. He barks for the tools and the arrows. But just as Tackle starts, he slams the brakes, calling out for him to wait, then tells him, loud and urgent, that delivering the weapons comes first. The repeating crossbow can wait, and this whole operation has to stay locked down and top secret. Carl grins with total confidence and tells Tackle, "Leave it to me." Geld jumps in fast, raising his hand with pure excitement, while Tackle stays quiet, watching them from the shadows behind. After that, Tackle and his brother team up and race to the Esteral Bow production site, hunting down every detail. Some pieces are forged by blacksmiths and swapped with metal, while the wooden parts get farmed out to different craftsmen so they'll last longer and crank out bows at full speed. Tackle is convinced they have to get ready for the war that's about to explode at the border next year. And good news, it looks like they'll pull it off with barely the minimum number of Estral bows they need. Meanwhile, Weiss caught up with Tackle's father right after the presentation and threw in his request. And boom, the mercenary crew got everything they needed. Later, the first batch of Esteral bows finally gets finished and delivered, and that same day, Tackle heads home with a huge weight lifted off his shoulders, and it gets even wilder at Tackle's father's request. They're also digging into the triple volley technique, and the deadline is already set for next autumn. Next year's war isn't some world-shaking catastrophe, it's a local brawl run by the frontier lords. Nothing on the giant scale, but Baron Solus's army is still marked to get crushed, losing up to 40 of its men. The scary part, this time the story bends in a way it never did before. In the Mercenary Corps, they're not just testing the Ester bow and taking feedback, they're out there training with it too. Tackle has 3 ruthless advantages, starting with the mercenary crew, twin-headed hawk, led by Vice, the ever-victorious general, who's been proving himself since 3 battles ago, and then Esther Bowes, who can slice clean through even the enemy's elite iron cavalry. And third, straight from the Baronial Chronicles, Tackle already has the Kingdom of Kyle's army collapse mapped out, down to the exact moment it all falls apart. Tackle can't stop spiraling over it day after day, until one day, everything finally clicks. Baron Solis leans in and tells him, "Since you can't fully trust Viscount Gorman's army as allies, you need one more move just to slice away even a little of that risk." Tackhill can't stop asking himself if all this worrying is even worth it anymore. Outside, Dalek corners his brother and demands to know what's wrong, and Tackle blurts out the truth about his light magic, and even Dalek can't believe it's real, because that kind of magic is practically unheard of in the Kingdom of Kyle. Tackle nods and agrees, but you can see the worry creeping all over his face. Then distress hits him hard, and he pleads with Dalek, "Please, just let me get this out for a bit." Dalek blurts out, "Are you sure that's really true?" And Tackle fires back, "If it weren't, I wouldn't be this crushed all the time." But Dalek lights up and shouts that it might be possible, yet Tacky freezes because they think they should ask their father first, or he'll start scolding them again. Then Tackle flashes a confident grin and says, "Relax, this is just a trap for first-timers," before promising that this move is how they'll finally take down the Empire's iron cavalry in the autumn of Kyle. Year 502, an express rider barrels into Est. The moment for the sortie is about to be revealed right around the corner. The old chronicle history of the Baron Solis domain, Omens of Ruin, marks Kyle's 502nd year as chaos hit Margrave Goth of the Griffonia Empire stormed into the Kingdom of Kyle, and Marcus Haseberg rushed in to block them at the border. But Viscount Hyoremy's forces shattered hard, and the right flank started to slip toward a full collapse. So Baron Solis' men, cut off and down 40, fought tooth and nail just to keep the line from snapping. Even as the Imperial Army wipes out a mountain of soldiers and swaggering morale stays sky high, their invasion still gets smashed to pieces, and the kingdom's army pays the same brutal price. Yet somehow they slam the door shut and repel it. All the while, the people of Esther are drowning in grief, lamenting every single thing that happened. Then, right at the end of a blistering summer, a breathless messenger on a blazing fast horse from the Haseberg court finally charges into Est. As he hands Tackle the news, the Griffonia Empire's preparing for round 2 because the signs of another invasion are screaming loud. Orders from Haseberg shouted down at them. Now they're driving their troops straight to Southern Gate Fortress at top speed, no excuses, and obliterate the enemy on the Southern Gate plains along the border south of the fortress. Finally, the moment they'd been waiting for has exploded onto the scene. Baron Solis gathers 215 standing soldiers and 335 part-timers from all over the domain boom, 550 fighters in total. Then he traps some as a garrison and charges 400 straight into the fight, with the double-headed Hawk mercenary band tossing in 40, while Solis's own forces hammer in 360, even if it misses the 600-man quota for a higher-ranked Viscount. This still hits double the 200 men, and ordinary Baron gets enough muscle to protect his honor. The map lays out their route from Essel Domain, through Hyoremy's Vi County, all the way to the Southern Gate Fortress near the Margraviate of Haseberg and the Demon Frontier beyond. And once that path is pinned down, they hit the road for the Southern Gate Plains. Meanwhile, Tackle stands in the city of Est, staring as the army marches away, with only the rest of his family left by his side. In the streets of Est, the wind tore through her long blonde hair. While taking a break from his self-practice, Tackle sits there, fuming with anticipation. His father and the rest should have been rolling up to the battlefield by now. Solis von Tackle, age 9, actually raised his hand to march off to war, then got shut down instantly. Klasia snapped at him that the battlefield isn't some kid's playground, and another voice cut in too, warning him it's far harsher than he's imagining. But this time, it's different. Solis' Baroness army is bringing something to the battlefield that no history ever mentions. And Tackle can't shake it from his mind, because if history plays out the same, the Solis Baron's army is about to get crushed and lose 40 of its strength in this war. And he already knows just how brutal that fight will be, which is exactly why he wished for it so fiercely. Tackle looks back on his hard prep. He's already mapped out the worries and the game plan against the Iron Cavalry with Vice, and he leans on the elite troops he commands because even the setbacks can be crushed. Vice is the tactical mastermind, the ever-victorious general, and once he shows up, the odds instantly flip. The Esther bow is a long-range weapon that can pierce Iron Cavalry armor like it's nothing, unlike past campaigns, and the cavalry's firepower has surged hard. Baron Solis yanked the specialized archers idea right out of his army, so every single soldier, including the cavalry, now marches with an Esther bow, because crossbows don't take much training, and even part-timers can still unleash the full power of ranged attacks. 2 years back, when grain prices exploded, Tackle's father got ahead of the chaos, stocking up and preparing for the cavalry to swell. Baron Solis's father was insanely meticulous. Every move came with a perfect cover story so nobody would smell anything suspicious. And since their settlement sat in such a tight spot, they had to ready horses right away, because a full-scale evacuation of all citizens was coming, and those horses were the lifeline built to handle the heavy traffic that couldn't wait. While the famine crushed everyone else, Tackle's father seized the chaos and hoarded a mountain of war horses because in other territories people either slaughtered them for food or sold their mounts for grain, and Baron Solis basically doubled down on snatching those deals. So the double-headed Hawk Mercenary Company got paid in war horses, and suddenly every last member was riding as cavalry back. When the unit barely had 100 riders, they now smash past 200 once the mercenaries are in. Back in Est, Clagy drills her sword like her life depends on it, knowing the stakes are real but still getting slammed with frustration, while Tackle lounges against a pillar nearby, watching and waiting. As a kid, he's got nothing left but sit tight here, clinging to hope for good news. He's already fought every battle he can. Tackle clenched his teeth and prayed in silence, begging that the fourth calamity would slam past and that his family and soldiers would come out unscathed. Then Anne stands tall with grit in her eyes, lifting her gaze as she murmurs that she believes they can beat it. Cut to a wide shot of the sky, where Clygia watches birds streak overhead, wind whipping her hair as she stares toward the far-off battlefield. The story snaps to the Southern Gate Plains, where the border stretches for miles, rows of soldiers and scattered camps everywhere you look, like the whole land is bracing for war. Over it all, Lord Darren stands armored, staring down the chaos from above. This is the Kyle Kingdom Army's far-right wing, packed with the Sol's Cornell baronial allied forces. Out of nowhere, a cloaked figure slips up behind Dalek and whispers, "Good work." Dalek snaps back that the Earth Mage has finished the fortification's trenches and traps included, and that they snagged the mage from Baron Cornell and got everything wrapped up. Then the two stride across the plains side by side. Dalek says he heard this invasion is just fallout from the Imperial succession fight. The cloaked figure probably Weiss could. They confirm it's spot on, but then admit straight up that it's a total nightmare for them either way. Dalek lays it out. Turns out the First Prince's faction lunged into a reckless play, and it's gotten them nowhere so far. So yeah, the First Prince stayed out of it, while only the Marquis of Gort stepped in. Then the Dalek leans in and demands, "So, Weiss, what do you think of our formation?" Weiss takes the question dead seriously, and Tackle nods like, "Got it," as a scout fires back that the enemy's forces are about equal to theirs, around 7,000 strong. The speaker yells that the enemy has snapped into a fish-scale formation to strike first, and our side plans to wrap them up with a crane-wing formation, then crush the counterattack. A tactical diagram lays bare the Griffonian Empire's 12,000 troops, stacked in a razor-sharp offensive fish-scale formation at the very top. The blonde commander nods like the plan makes sense, but it's a gamble, then leans in and demands, "So what does that risk actually mean?" The blonde commander leans in and says, "Marcus Haseberg is right where we expected, planted in the center," but warns the enemy might not be targeting his main camp, then points to the image the mounted Marquis, standing tall under his banner. The recap rolls on, and their huge wings just won't sync up. Every commander stakes out a hill for the smarter defense, but that choice splinters their troops, stretching both wings wide as they spread too far apart. Tackle thinks the enemy's real plan is to break them apart, then hit one of the wings to start. Two tactical diagrams scream the threat. Once the enemy smashes one of their wings, they can rip into the main camp from the center's flank, or they could smash right through, slice off the Allies' escape route, and then close in to trap them from every side. Tackle snaps out of his thoughts for a second. Then the explanation blasts right back into motion. Because their army is stretched thin across this massive encirclement, they lose depth, crack at the first push, and can't coordinate with their allies, so soldiers get cut off, left stranded, and out of the fight. And against an enemy with no edge in troop numbers. That gap is deadly. Images reveal Viscount Gorman's army marching into the frame, and Viscount Harami's army, where the analysis says the right wing is a total mess. The two commanders trade worried looks, and the other one snaps that with distrust between them, the turnip handouts somehow hit right after the refugee mess, and Tackle just realizes, with a jolt, they've been a target from the very beginning. The blonde commander nods, and you can tell it's a real headache because even with their own allies standing there, the Alliance still has to keep one eye on the danger. Meanwhile, a tactical diagram spells out the right wing setup, and here's the scary part. If the enemy goes all in on that side, the Solus Cornell Alliance sitting all the way out on the far right will get cut off, surrounded, and crushed. Tackle warns that if those two Viscounts try to bury their old grudges right in the middle of this battle, everything's about to explode fast. The blonde commander snaps back that if both armies even drift a little under enemy pressure, the entire formation will crumble and fall into serious danger. The blonde commander nods like, yeah, they're probably thinking the exact same thing, and then straight up agrees it's definitely risky as hell. Then the video slams in a dramatic shot of the Griffonian heavy cavalry fully armored brutes in horned helmets, bearing the coat iron cavalry corps mark, and the narrator gushes that this is their main weapon, pure and unstoppable confidence on parade. But truth hits hard if the Allied forces charge them head-on. They'll crumble in just a few minutes. But then the blonde commander stops mid-sentence and blurts out with a shaky, half-cut gasp, "Slight some..." Believe me, this only works if they charge it head-on. Someone points at this moment and says, "This is the opening we needed. This turning point could flip the whole war." The story jumps to three commanders posted on a high ledge, staring down at a battlefield that sprawls like a nightmare, and the narration hits its point. Baron Cornell's troops are right there with them, locked into place by a man who's basically a genius when it comes to fortification. Baron Cornell is suddenly spotlighted among the crowd standing there. The briefing spills everything out. Every one of the 400 soldiers gets an Esther bow, and then they roll out 200 brand new cavalry units too. Tackle stands with the commanders as these battle pieces get placed on the board, one after another. The tactical briefing drags on, then someone leans in and says, "Hold up, there's one more thing," before dropping the real kicker, the final secret tactic they've been hiding. They're saying the charge on their left is being led by the famous, battle-proven Viscount Curious, and if he times his strike with theirs just right, they'll snap into a half-encirclement from the left. And here's the kicker, even their allies won't see it coming, because once all this prep is locked in, they're set to put up one hell of a fight. Just as the plans get laid out in full detail, an armored figure lunges in from behind, and Tackle grins with that bold, confident smirk like, "Watch me flip the whole mood." That dramatic line hangs in the air for a beat, and Weiss just stares, utterly baffled, while the blonde commander can't stop a grin from spreading. Baron Soli says he heard Weiss got recommendations from his own sons, and he insists appointing the captain as their strategist was the perfect move. Then he leans in, pauses, and admits Tackle was so ruthless he can't stop wondering where that insane intensity comes from. The Baron's voice cuts out mid-sentence as the screen switches to someone else, shown from behind. Meanwhile, the blonde commander grins and reveals the truth. He planned it all from the very start. Weiss blurts out that it's an honor, looking genuinely shocked and then impressed, all at once. The blonde commander clocks it. Soon the enemy's going to start moving. Battlefield after battlefield sprawled out ahead of them. Then boom! A command screamed across the field, calling every single troop into action, and the narration quietly points out that this was the fight that history would later brand as the Southern Gate Extermination Battle. A senior commander throws his arm up like a signal, cape whipping through the air as he roars that combat is about to start. So why does Yiwo stand poised below, while the narration makes it clear the battle is officially underway? At the Griffonia Empire Army Headquarters, where the whole fate of the Empire hangs in the air, Margrave Goat surveys the battlefield and grins, saying the fools from the Kingdom of Kyle lined up just as he predicted. The Margrave spits in contempt, mocking the fact that they can't even grasp why the Empire would purposely let them take the hill. Margrave Goat keeps digging into the Kyle forces, and one thing becomes crystal clear to him: they always fight to hold the hills that give them cover, and in their heads, it's defense, defense, defense. Nothing else matters. The Margrave lays out the battle plan, and it's brutal. While the center and right armies slowly buckle, the left wing rips straight through the enemy's right flank. Imperial commands roar across the field, and the officer snaps the iron cavalry into a rear standby, waiting to explode into the front line and smash the enemy's right flank the second the opening hits. Then the shout to charge booms across the battlefield, and the Griffonian forces surge forward in a perfectly timed assault. Meanwhile, on the kingdom side, the commander barks razor-sharp orders. Snipers snap into their exact numbered spots, then hold perfectly still, waiting for the signal to hit. The subordinate snaps into action and says, "Yes, sir," while the commander orders them to broadcast everything to the whole army, just like they agreed. A tactical map lights up with Viscount Hyarimi's army, Viscount Gorman's army, and the allied forces of Baron Solis and Baron Cornell, and then the commander slams down the plan. Smash their right wing with the main force and cut them down one by one. Keeping the center and left wings just close enough to pin them down, he made the right wing look totally scattered. The fight explodes across the open field as Viscount Gorman's army crashes headfirst into the Imperial forces in brutal, no-holds-barred combat, as Viscount Hyarimi's army clashes all at once. A commander just watches it unfold exactly as predicted, then whips around and orders the entire Baron army to get ready for a brutal, long-range bombardment. The whole tactical picture snaps into focus, and someone leans in like, "Told you this is exactly how it's supposed to go." Then the strategic breakdown hits, step by step. The enemy slammed into the right wing with 2,000 troops, a brutal numbers mismatch against the combined clout of Viscount Hyarimi and Viscount Gorman's forces. On the battlefield, it's all about the numbers, but the real danger is even worse. Every Viscount's army morale is sinking fast, and the grim prediction keeps coming true. Once both Viscount lines break, the Empire will unleash the Iron Cavalry Corps to crush them for good. Then hit the main camp's right flank and watch it swing wide open. Up on the hilltop, the commander surveys the chaos and says it's only a matter of time now, and the other answers with a clean, simple yes. Side by side, those two warriors just stand there and watch the battle play out exactly like they predicted. Down on the battlefield, Viscount Hyarimi's army is spiraling into full-blown chaos. Soldiers are screaming, "We can't hold this anymore." The enemy outnumbers them like crazy. Someone panics and screams, begging, "Is there no retreat order?" The battle rages harder and harder. Soldiers are dropping left and right in the middle of the melee. Meanwhile, at Griffonia's Empire Army HQ, an officer snaps his gaze at the front line because one side is already crumbling. Another officer points out that the other side is still digging in and fighting hard, even with fewer than half their numbers, because really, they don't stand a chance. Then an Imperial commander screams orders, snapping his troops into a half circle to surround those stubborn bastards and crush them for good. Meanwhile, Viscount Gorman spits curses at that wretched opportunist, calling him a pathetic fool as his army reels hard under the Imperial assault's relentless, coordinated strike. Gorman's troops admit they can't hold the line anymore because at this pace they're about to get boxed in by 2,000 enemies. A blonde warrior throws herself into the chaos, fighting with everything she's got, while the commander clenches his jaw and accepts grimly that it's finally come to this. The Imperial banners surge forward, then a sharp order snaps through the ranks. Fall back, hold that line steady. From the lookout, reports hit back-to-back. Viscount Hyarimi's army is crumbling. The Solis Cornell baronial allied force gets nailed to the battlefield, and then Viscount Gorman's forces start falling back exactly as planned. A subordinate snaps his head toward Weiss. He blurts out, "Is it about time?" And Weiss just answers with a straight-up, simple yeah. Then Tackle snaps an order for them to give the signal. Once the signal device catches the light, it's set to blast the predetermined message across the battlefield. And, just like that, a brand new history kicks off right here. And in this quick, almost symbolic pause, Anne and young Tackle stand by the windows, like everything's calm, like a new world is within reach, because this is the future he's been fighting for, and the moment is finally here. Weiss snaps that it's time and declares, "We're doing this right now," while Tackle realizes it was literally minutes from starting the moment they've all been waiting to hit. The commanders are locked in and standing by, and right alongside them are Tackle, Weiss, Dalek, Kleisha, and Chris, all of them ready to explode into that decisive moment. At the Graphonia Empire Army headquarters, Marcus Gortz's officers stare in disbelief because what they see looks exactly like the enemy's panicked retreat. One officer barks, pointing them to the pathetic panic in front of them, while another swoons over the marquee saying it's all because His Excellencies are so cunning, and their elite troops are so sure they're about to win. An officer leans in and suggests it's finally time to land the finishing blow on those fools. Meanwhile, way out in the background, a signal flag snaps up like a starting gun. The Iron Cavalry surges forward at full speed, smashing into the front lines. On the battlefield, an Imperial commander on the ground screams orders to smash the enemy's right wing, wheel around their back, and drag the Margrave's head straight to him. Weiss stays ice cold and calmly declares they'll hit the enemies on the far right first with the tiny, isolated force. The Imperial commander bellows like he already owns victory, barking orders at his forces to crush every last one of them. Suddenly, the kingdom's forces spot it. The Iron Cavalry barrels straight at them. A soldier screams in terror that it's the Iron Cavalry, and someone else yells they're charging straight for them. Then a desperate voice demands reinforcements from the center, but the commander snaps that they can't budge or the Margrave will be targeted. Young Tackle stares out over the battlefield, clocking how everything flips in the blink of an eye. Someone bursts in, breathless, and demands to know if Lord Darren dropped any instructions. The camera zooms in on a figure in profile, caught in a deep, contemplative stare that screams Vice. 6 armored soldiers stand in a tight line, armor gleaming, faces taut with tension and determination as they wait for the command to hit. Tackle stands on the fortifications and barks orders like a storm, telling everyone to check their arrows, get ready to fire, and stay locked inside the walls until they hear the signal, because his father has guarded this very spot again and again. And now the soldiers huddle behind the wooden walls, fists clenched, holding their breath until the signal finally crashes in. Meanwhile, out in the distance, someone catches a flash of movement and their mind races. What the heck is that? A lone fighter rockets across the battlefield. Tackle spots them instantly and shouts, "Lord Dalek!" Tackle barks his signal, and everyone swings their aim straight for the enemy group's heads. His heart is hammering as he watches that Iron Cavalry thunder across the plains out in the distance. Everyone around him is staring, holding their breath, and waiting for him to make his move. Even with all that tension roaring inside him, the moment drops into this eerie, breathless quiet. White stands shoulder to shoulder with Tackle and tells him to take a breath. If they keep their cool and follow through, they'll snatch this win. Tackle admits to himself that he's terrified, knuckles white as he clenches his fist. But staring at Weiss and feeling the moment slam into him, his expression hardens with pure determination. Then Tackle snaps his bow into place and declares loud and clear that he's made up his mind too. His eyes blazing with focus and grit, he braces to fire, then Weiss snaps into action, yelling for Tackle to line up at 2 o'clock to the right and shoot right now. Tackle speaks up and demands everyone trust him. And just like that, the two commanders lock in perfect sync because the decisive moment is here. And when it hits, Tackle looses his arrow. That moment hits like a tidal wave. He can't stop picturing him and his brother standing side by side right here. And the caption makes it crystal clear. This is months before the war even kicks off. Meanwhile, back at the Solace Barony mansion, in the courtyard, one of the Tackle's siblings is blasting away at magic. Then they ask, dead serious, if their magic is completely useless, like, what's the point? They insist light magic isn't even an attack, more like a sneaky distraction. At best, another sibling who's obsessed with the sword snarls, why did I get the short end of the stick with this petty little trick? Why not fire or lightning? The magic user straight up admits it's nothing more than blasting light, and even if it smacks someone head on, it still won't hurt a single bit. Then a third person jumps in and admits they totally get what the magic user is going through. Hey, can you try that magic right here, right now? The youngest sibling yells at their big brother to wait up while the magic user cracks, relax, we're just making the light fly. And the sword user suddenly gets it that light isn't stuck in place at all. It can soar and zip around. The magic user cups their hands and summons a glowing orb of light. Then whoosh, it floats through the air like it's alive, proving the power on the spot. From up high, one sharp observer keeps his eyes locked on everything. As a long-haired girl watches from the side, the young magic wielder sprints alongside the glow, chasing the light like it's calling their name. One guy is stunned by it, but the magic user shrugs and insists it's only glowing. The sibling blurts that their brother's magic is pure genius, but the magician just looks totally baffled by all the hype, so Tackle grabs them and hauls them straight to report to their father first. And, shockingly, Baron Solis doesn't snap or spiral at all over the news just a few days later. During their usual training, the magic user asks their master about light magic, and the master confirms everything they were told. The very next day, at the training grounds on East City's outskirts, the drills fire back up and the training continues. The sibling grabs their brother and begs him to show the master the two tackles. I'm getting seriously pumped about the magic right about now, but even if the magic user begs their master for answers, all they get is more glow and nothing actually changes. That frustrated magic user shrugs it off like it's all just dazzling, even though deep down he's screaming to go home. Then someone blurts, "What happens if you shove that light right in front of a galloping horse?" Suddenly, Tackle's face tightens as the answer clicks into place. He snaps his question to the light magic user, "Would you unleash this on the battlefield?" The magic user hesitates for a beat. Then the real consequences sink in. A galloping horse going blind would be catastrophic. Someone actually thinks it through, and the magic user confirms it without a doubt. Tackle's reed gets backed up. Then Tackle breaks it down. Lord Dalek's light magic isn't just powerful, it's a tactical nightmare waiting to strike. The words hit hard, and suddenly Dalek finally gets what Tackle was trying to warn him about. Then after that talk, he drills himself to blast light farther and land every shot with ruthless precision. Here's what makes this plan so dangerous in a world where mages are scarce, precious, and basically counted on your fingers. Even inside the kingdom, there aren't many, and in the Empire, there are almost none. And most mages don't just learn magic, they're born into it through bloodline magic, so they're usually the head of a noble family or tied to the family by name and blood. People this high up don't usually charge the front lines except out in a few frontier zones. And when it comes to mages, fighting up there is basically a no-go. Magic tactics can't be predicted by anyone one wrong move, and the whole plan flips. That revelation lands like a sucker punch because light mages are practically unheard of. Meanwhile, Dalek finally clocks Tackle's angle standing there all alone. Tackle has already calculated how this whole setup is going to turn to his advantage. But even then, ruthless, terrifying foes were waiting. And right then, a voice blared, saying they can't let Dalek join the army. The story snaps to the mansion outside. Everyone's gathered in one tense line. Clygia, the parents, young Tackle in his white cloak, and the rest of the siblings. Then someone blurts out a furious protest, demanding to know why, and shouting straight for their father and mother. Baron Solis smirks and says Dalek too will someday storm the battlefield, just not yet, because it's still far too soon. Baron Solis tips his hat to Dalek's grind, then snaps to Tackle to shut up just for a moment. Tackle tries to shoot back, insisting he's already laid out how his brother's light magic wipes out the Empire's iron cavalry. But her parents snap back. Dalek is only 12. Right then, Clygia crumples to her knees, yanks at Tackle's clothes, and begs with everything in her to keep Dalek from heading to that deadly place. Tackle yells, "Mom!" But before she can answer, the mother, he turns to Chris and warns him not to reward a kid's stubborn streak, because once you indulge it, it grows, and Baron Solis just stands there, stone still, while that massive mansion looms behind him. Then the mother blares out that something is seriously wrong. Baron Solis and young Tackle both snap into shock the second her intensity explodes out of nowhere. Inside their head, their narration spills the truth. They start off just simmering with jealousy over Tackle. But as they watched him grind through every task, they finally realized the truth that mattered most. The narration keeps pushing. What on earth did they envy so badly? And what is Tackle burning to achieve right now? So why did these feelings hit so hard and turn into pure frustration? Meanwhile, in the library, a young guy is cramming alone, while someone lurks behind a bookshelf. Then it hits this isn't about pride or what people think. because even they're chasing the exact same goal. Then the truth hits hard. Every single person is fighting to protect their own family, and that dramatic declaration locks the Soli family together, parents and kids standing side by side as one. Suddenly, a colossal burst of light detonates over the battlefield, and the Imperial soldiers scream as that blinding magic crashes into them. One soldier howls about his own eyes, while the others reel backward, battered by confusion and pain. Chris blurts out in shock, yelling, "What the hell was that light?" Clygia and the other siblings just freeze in stunned silence as the magical blast rips straight through the enemy ranks. The Imperial cavalry breaks panic, hits hard, and riders start tumbling off their horses. Horses churn in chaos, utterly disoriented by the light magic. Then one trooper shrieks as he slips and goes down. Meanwhile, Kingdom soldiers thunder forward to block them. Then a voice roars, "Stop right there, back off." The blinded Imperial cavalry riders are stumbling around like they're one wrong step away from disaster. They can't even see where they're heading. Then the cavalry gets thrown off balance, stumbles, and crashes straight into the trenches and obstacles Tackles had set up. One Imperial knight spots the trenches way too late, lets out a brutal grunt, and tumbles in head first. Someone points out that those trenches shouldn't be any kind of problem, but the trap finally snaps into focus. Those tiny steps and shallow trenches turn into nasty obstacles. The cavalry usually sweeps aside with ease, until now, but only if they could actually lay eyes on them. Blinded to the world ahead, the soldiers stumble across the terrain and drop one by one right into the trap of prepared defenses, and the Kingdom troops explode into cheers as that iron cavalry finally crumbles like they can barely breathe from disbelief. "So we're safe now," someone blurts, while another soldier gapes like it's magic itself. Then it clicks. Lord Dalek is the one who unleashed that devastating power, and the whole squad watches in stunned awe as the supposedly invincible iron cavalry breaks apart, rider after rider toppling down. Dalek plants himself on the battlefield in his shining white armor, while the young mage is still buzzing, just flipped the whole fight with one crushing spell. Meanwhile, from right there in Margrave Hasburg's position, things start to heat up fast. An officer hurls out an urgent report about the Iron Cavalry situation, and another commander watches closely as Baron Solus clearly lures something big on the battlefield. And the Marquis himself studies every move with a razor-sharp, calculating stare. At Viscount Hierony's forces, the commanders lock up in stunned silence as they watch the disaster explode right in front of their eyes. From his commanding perch, Count Goat erupts in fury, stunned by the sight in front of him, then roars that his iron cavalry is the mightiest force in the entire army. The reports hit like a punch. His worst nightmare is real. 1/3 of the iron cavalry is down and out. The Count snaps completely, roaring that this is absurd and demanding answers on how it could have happened. While the battle rages, someone moves in on a young Dalek and softly hypes him up for his incredible work. Derek yells at his master, his voice trembling with raw emotion. Then, Tackle slips a hand onto Dalek's shoulder from behind and praises him, telling him the young mage did great, standing right there in his shining white armor. Light magic flipped the whole battle in an instant. Then Tackle told Dalek, "Leave the rest to us." Meanwhile, the commander stares at the battlefield and clocks that roughly 2/3 of the enemy are still out there. Then he snaps his order and drives every unit to the next step right now, while another voice barks for everyone to get ready for long-range suppression fire. The story kicks off with Dirk Baron Solus's eldest stepping into his very first battle, the same kid who'll later be feared as the Sword Saint, the Swordsman of Light. And when it's over, Dalek throws both fists in the air, yelling with pure hype after his hit lands, celebrating his victory like crazy. Imperial soldiers got smashed and left wounded before the battle even started, seething with resentment and humiliation. A wrecked battlefield stretches out below as a white bird swoops through the sky above, totally shredding the silence. Dalek looms over the wreckage, barking at Tackle that he did everything he could. The story snaps right to Soli's manor. In the council chamber, someone slams the room with the news that the first regular council is about to begin. Tackle tells us that right after his father and older brother marched off to war, he didn't sit idly waiting for updates. He pushed his parents to set up a flood defense council before they even left. He flashes back to telling his mother about the report on old tech that warned of floods after a brutal drought, and her reaction says it all. His parents took it deadly serious, likely because they'd lived through both feast-level harvests and crushing dry spells. Tackle's mom steps in and directly talks to Krisha. She reminds her daughter Krija that she promised to stay quiet in the seat beside her during the meeting, and right then, the 7-year-old Solis kid, Krija von Solis, clutches her teddy bear so tightly she's practically glowing with cuteness. That's why Young is crying at the meeting. Turns out her age doesn't stop her at all, because her older brothers are already in, and she wanted to be there too. But she can't walk away from her mother for a second, so she ends up going anyway. Krisha clutches her teddy bear and declares, "I'm playing with Sarah." Then someone yells to Lady Kriya, and a young blonde girl pops into view, introduced as Sarah, daughter of the Baron from the Cornell branch family. Sarah steps in as a key observer, like she's there to hear every explanation, so Crizio decides he'll play the same role too. Meanwhile, another voice chimes in, and you can tell that person still just doesn't get it. Sarah rushes in with an apology, waving it off like it's no big deal. And the real explanation unfolds because she's not just from a branch family. She's an Earth magic user, the only Earth mage in their territory besides Tackle's mother, and she serves Tackle's mom herself, sent all the way to Estelle thanks to Baron Cornell's kindness. Sarah suggests they hang back to play after the meeting, and Kryja goes wild with excitement, celebrating right then and there. Right as the commentary starts, a screen pops up with Tackle's explanation. The Cornell barony isn't led by some stranger. It's run by Tackle's mom's younger brother, and the two families get along surprisingly well. Then it hits Tackle's mother, even sent Sarah along to smooth things out for her daughter in her new home. And to make sure you don't miss a single connection, a family tree diagram flashes on screen, laying out how Baron Solis's family ties into the Cornell barony. Meanwhile, Raymond stands up straight at the head of the council table and vows he's about to unveil the preliminary investigation report. At Lord Tackle's demand, he tore into the investigation and finally got answers from an elder in a village near Mars. No line in the documents even hinted at heavy rains or floods after the Great Drought. Yet the truth he uncovered was absolutely massive. Turns out on Mars, every 50 to 100 years, a monster flood hits hard enough to snap the embankment clean in half, and young Tackle just sinks into the report, listening like every single word might save the world. But here's the twist over the last 20 years. These floods have started getting erased from memory because the smaller ones never showed up, and the only thing people still cling to is that old warning, beware water disasters after a long drought. The second that embankment gives way, the muddy flood will surge in and swallow everything in its path, tearing through the area and causing catastrophic damage. Then one guy at the table leans in and asks, "Did Lord Tackle catch that too?" Tackle nods. "Yeah, he noticed it." Tackle blurts out that he remembers it from an old history book, the history of the barony, so he admits half of it is probably bogus, then apologizes. Meanwhile, tiny chibi versions of the council members light up and call it a pretty legend, but that story ends up confirming the barony's history for real. Then they flash a map of the region right to the east of Esther territory. The Alg River rips through like a giant artery, and both banks are packed with massive granaries, no lie. This water is the lifeline of the whole territory, and Mars is a town planted right on those riverbanks. Tackle mutters to himself that this town can't be that old, because in the last decade it blew up overnight as a grain collection hub, all thanks to the huge farming push his parents poured into the place, which is exactly why the legendary Great Flood rumor never made it to the government. Raymond keeps pushing through his report. Turns out these little river floods pop up somewhere across the entire Esther territory every single year. And since the damage stays minor, the government never even noticed. So from now on, they'll watch towns and villages beyond Mars and keep the investigation rolling. Raymond reports back, and Tackle immediately thanks him. Then Raymond just stands in the doorway, taking that gratitude in with a nod. Raymond warns them that if Mars and its surroundings drown in that once-in-a-century flood from the legends, the damage will be brutal, way worse than that last drought. Tackle shoots back that he already spoke with his brother about getting the Earth mages in once this war ends. His brother will finally send them over to build that embankment. Sarah tells the council, "We have to stop this flood no matter what it costs." Meanwhile, young Clygia grips her teddy bear so tightly, her face goes stone serious as the meeting drags on. Then Tackle drops the bombshell. He's already seen the floods coming next year. He lays it all out. Disaster is marching straight for them next summer. The Orag River is set to burst its banks, swollen by days of non-stop rain and brutal downpours. That muddy torrent will smash into Mars and gulp down the town and every scattered village, killing a ton of people overnight, while the granary region gets buried in mud so badly that the damage won't be repairable for years. A chart blasts onto the screen, showing how Esther Territory's crop harvest ratio plays out from the last timeline, because when drought wrecked the whole region and other farmlands turned useless, the low-lying land around Mars stayed reachable and easy to irrigate. With damage so small, it only cut about 1/3 of the total harvest, and that's why Mars became the lifeline for the starving territory. Tackle realizes this is a death sentence. Once that flood hits, it's going to bulldoze everything in sight. Then the narrator spells it out. Water wheels spread their power across the world, and other regions boomed, so people don't lean on the Mars area as hard anymore. But Mars still churns out about 1/5 of all production. So once that flood swallows the whole town, the damage hits harder than in any earlier timeline, because Mars is basically the heart of those water wheel-powered flour mills, and when the waters rise, everything gets wrecked on a brutal scale. Later on, someone corners Raymond and asks how his countermeasures are going, and Tackle's mother jumps in saying they're combing the waterways and beefing up floodgates in places that already saw minor floods, while Raymond adds that they're also gearing up to build dikes near Mars. They keep diving deeper into flood prevention plans over on other fronts. They're checking rivers, testing sluice gates, and stacking sandbags, but the flour mill can't budge, so they shift the collection points up to higher ground. Small Tackle can't believe any of this, and she's totally stunned, so Chibikelegia bursts in, screams that Tackle is basically a cheat, and vows she's going to wipe it out. Meanwhile, Raymond watches the plan turn into action. Those embankments will start the moment the army comes back. Tackle's mother straight up admits they're still scrambling over the budget and keeping everyone safe on a massive scale. So Raymond leans in and demands to know exactly how much they need to roll out to actually make it work. Then Tackle leans in with his usual curiosity about what's going on next door and grills Raymond. If that place gets hit with a flood, what happens to the neighboring Gorman Vi County? Raymond lays it out with a diagram upstream from Mars. The other side is blocked by a hill, so water should be unable to spill over there. Tackle's mom looks totally lost at the question, but Raymond jumps in and explains what's really going on. Lord Tackle says the same thing. Looks like that pesky steward won't be barging back to complain again. Raymond lays it out. The next complaint could hit their embankment. And if that goes, Gorman's territory gets flooded. Tackle's mother finally clocks what it really means. Then Tackle lays it out. Gorman has yanked water from the river into that basin and slapped in multiple water wheels to exploit it. Tackle and Clygia both whip around in pure shock. Tackle snaps that after all the complaining Gorman did, they're just cloning Esther now. Then a little note chimes in Nishita's Kansai dialect, slips out by accident. After that brutal drought, he breaks it down. Gorman built a pump and power water wheel, then carved out their own waterways for everyone to rely on. But the real issue, there are breakdowns everywhere, so the operating rate stays painfully low. Chibikelegia just clocked that and called it out. Raymond admits he's not an expert either, yet he keeps smashing attempts with what he knows from light novels, and still he fails hard until another voice snaps that you can't just write your way into something that actually works, not when you don't even understand the basics of gears. The narration then hammers home the truth that crystallized leap of technology only came to life because master craftsmen poured in their wisdom. Suddenly, a voice shouts, "Raymond, wait!" While Tackle studies the map of Essel Territory and Vi County Gorman, it clicks if flooding can hit Esley, then Vi County Gorman could get smashed too, because it's upstream. The details prove it. This is totally doable. They've even gone as far as cutting the embankment on purpose to steer the water, and Tackle can't help thinking, yep, it was exactly like I figured. One council member snaps that if anything happens to Gorman right now, it'll be their fault for allowing it. And Tackle recoils in pure shock at the cruelty of that comment. Cleggy then calls out to her big brother, Tackle. Tackle snaps at Clygia, calling her out and reminding her she swore she'd stay quiet in that meeting. But Clegg cuts in mid-moment, clutching her teddy bear, and fires off one simple question: if the river never overflows, where does all that water end up? Right in the middle of the fight, he freezes. Then it hits him all at once. He had no clue what would happen if he stopped the Mars flood, even with the real flood points right in front of him. He never guessed what that choice would unleash downstream S-sink. He shook his head, no way. Mars first, then Est, and from Est the water would keep rolling straight past those farming villages, and after that Viscount Hyorimi's land. That realization slams into Tackle hard, like he's been dodging it without even noticing, and now he can't stop wondering what it'll do to everything. The range is way too wide, and he's terrified he won't react in time until his little sister spots the glaring mistake in his plan. Then, in one of those cute chibi flashes, the voices pop in and ask, "Is Clea awesome?" and straight up confirm, yep, she really is. Someone gushes like they're supposed to, calling her a proper Lady Clea, and that little girl's face lights up with pure joy. Tackle finally steadies his nerves and lays it out. Clearly turns out they're already all over that same lead, because they've already drawn up a whole list of potential locations that need countermeasures. Then Tackle ends yet another tutoring session with Sarah until someone blurts out they need more Earth mages sent out. And Sarah, dead tired, looks genuinely relieved that it's finally over. And then it hits them. Everyone realizes that was way too close for comfort. Chibiutakul turns to Sarah, grateful as ever, thanking her again for stepping in and helping the struggling students. This time, while another chibi figure drops a grin and says they can totally picture exactly how it all went down. Meanwhile, Raymond gets yanked into a tense call about Viscount Gorman and Viscount Hyorimi. He checks in with Lord Chris, and Clea urges Sarah to break the news to her brother. Raymond slaps his hand on the table as the meeting starts, flat out admitting that an old book can only go so far, but the message still matters. Then he vows to issue a decree to toughen up the dikes and waterways in their territory, because next summer's flooding threat is real, and even a tiny chibi figure pops in to thank him for stepping up. Then Raymond steps up and declares it's time to wrap up the first regular meeting right here. Tackle cuts in and says, "From now on, Lord Darren and Lord Dalek are joining the meeting too." He clocks the clock next summer is coming, and he keeps grinding on those papers as he talks. He's praying they can finally dig into the detailed countermeasures, because the narration makes it clear. War against the Great Flood, about to slam, the Esther territory is only just getting started. A few days slip by after that meeting, and then someone shouts, "Lord Tackle." He's hunched over a map, eyes locked on the Estel territory, face set like stone because by next summer, he vows to himself, he'll make it in time no matter what. Then an announcer shouts that a messenger from the fort has arrived. He rushes in face to face, and the second he spots the message, his whole world lights up because it's from his father. He screams that he's on his way and bolts straight for the entrance, while, from above, you see a carriage glide up to the estate, packed with figures already converging around it. Dalek, Clea, and Sarah are right there in the crowd, watching it all unfold. A messenger bursts in and shouts that they've got fresh reports straight from the battlefield. A battlefield messenger slams into town with urgent news. She announces that Count Haseberg's army at Southern Gate Fortress. Just like that, he's tangled up the Griffonian Empire and Count Goat's army too, while young Tackle's eyes go wide in pure shock at the news. Then the messenger's voice lights up as she blurts the news. Lord Dalek, Baron Solus's eldest son, crushed the enemy. Despite it being his very first battle, his father's army slaughtered the Iron Cavalry until they were wiped out. And now she declares it a massive victory, with everyone safe and only a few soldiers injured. Tackle's mother throws her hands over her face, drowning in emotion. Then Small, Tackle yells to her, and Sarah stands back. Watching her expression flips to pure relief the second she realizes Derek is safe. In this rare, calm hush, the whole family huddles together, and the mother can't help thinking Baron Solus is going to be furious when he learns she only had the eldest son on her mind. Then young Tackle leans in and asks if Dad and Big Brother are coming home. Someone corners Baron Solus and asks if he's really returning, and he nods, confirming it. Tackle instantly demands he buy a mountain of souvenirs, but Baron Solus only smirks and says he might not even have any. So Tackle blurts out, "Wait, why?" Then the news finally bursts into the city of Est, and the whole place explodes with joy everywhere. Sake and food are brought out, and every town and village throws a celebration side by side, while the soldiers' families and lovers can finally let out that long-awaited sigh of relief. The narrator reminds us this is the fourth of the 5 brutal calamities that rocked the previous era, and right now, young Clasia and Tackle nuzzle up close, sweet as can be. Then the Solis family crowds into their home, Raymond hovering off to the side, and in the doorway the mother cradles young Tackle, while Clygia stands right beside her, maid smiles in the back. Then the big declaration hits, and the joy of it all echoes through their life.